Good evening. Welcome to the Town Council meeting in Pioppi Room, Jacobs Edwards Library, August 5th, 2013, 7 p.m. Agenda item number 1, please join me in the pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, roll call, please.
Councilor Carrasco?
Present.
Councilor Clements?
Present.
Councilor Langevin?
Present.
Councilor Manna?
Excused.
Councilor Marcucci?
Present.
Councilor Moriarty?
Present.
Councilor Nicola?
Present.
Councilor Peliquin?
Present.
Councilor Vandal?
Present.
8 here.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is consider and accept the Town Council meeting minutes of Monday, July 29th, 2013.
So moved.
Discussion, changes. Seeing none, show of hands, please. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, subcommittee reports. A, General Government, Councilor Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Government will have a subcommittee meeting tomorrow night, Tuesday, August 6th, in the George Parent Room at 7 o'clock. And that will be to vote in the citizen members and if there's any other business at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. B, DPW, Councilor Vandal.
Mr. Chairman, we have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday evening, the 7th, at 7 p.m. in the Rice Conference Room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. C, Education and Human Resources. Human Services, excuse me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a meeting scheduled for Thursday, August 8th, 7 p.m., Rice Conference Room. And that agenda is to vote in subcommittee members. And that's about it. If there's anything else on that agenda, then evening.
Thank you. D, Planning and Development, Councilor Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning and Development has a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, the 13th at 6:30 in the Rice Conference Room. Again, that's also to vote in citizens members. If there is anybody who is still interested in being on a committee, you have until these meetings take place to get your information into the town manager's office. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. E, Protection in Person and Property, Councilor Moriarty.
Thank you. The Protection of Persons and Property Subcommittee will hold its first meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, August 6th, in the George Parent Conference Room at Town Hall. It's scheduled to follow the general government meeting, so most likely about 7:30-ish. And again, that will, as the others, will be to determine the membership, the citizen membership of that committee. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, Chairman's announcements. I haven't done this evening. I will go right to number 6, Town Manager's announcements. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's on. I do have a couple of announcements this evening. I have received some information from the Southbridge Adult Education Network that comprised of various representatives throughout the community: Jacob Edwards Library, Literacy Volunteers, Worcester Community Action Council, Southbridge School System, ELL Program, Quinsigamond Community College, and Workforce Central. That there is some information in regards to some changes in the, in the rules and regulations for GEDs, the GED testing schedule, such as so folks are aware that if you are pursuing a high school equivalency diploma, that they need to know that they must complete all sections of the current GED test before December 31st, or start from scratch under new program guidelines. Attached this fall 2013, the QCC GED test schedule. So Quinsigamond Community College is obviously hosting this. The very last day for anyone to register for the GED test anywhere in the state is October 18th. The very last day for any GED test anywhere in the state is December 14th. If you have questions or concerns in regards to this, please contact 508-765-3880. and that was put out by Holly Christo. Next, I have an item from our Board of Health, or the Health Department. We are changing the bulk pickup registration calls, so effective immediately, you no longer need to call Casella to schedule a bulk pickup. Simply call the Health Department at 508-764-5242 to make arrangements for a pickup. We will be posting that on cable as well, so we'll have that information available. But for as of right now, if you could just contact the Board of Health Department instead of Casella. Also, I was handed this evening that the Jacob Edwards Library and the Southbridge Public Schools present, I shouldn't get these at the last minute because these names are hard to pronounce, but Jared J. Crosscheck, Imagining Beyond Your Circumstances for grades 6 and up, Jacob Edwards Library, Thursday, August 22nd, from 6:30 to 7:30. He's a well-known author and illustrator of the Lunch Lady graphic novel series. Will soon visit Jacob Edwards Library. I have heard that, the Lunch Lady series, so that is a kind of a popular kids book. And then also, I do appreciate the council's indulgence. That last meeting I was off. I was actually playing hooky at Patriots training camp, so well, I guess that was a pretty good excuse. I had a good time. And I am on vacation at the next scheduled meeting of the council, which is, I believe, the 22nd? 19th. So I will be away on vacation, and per the charter, Karen Harnoy, acting as the town accountant, will serve as acting town manager in my absence for that period. And that concludes my report this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Agenda item number 7, swearing in presentation. Presentation of police audit by Ernest Horn, Municipal Consultants of New England. Before we get going, councilors, I just want to say right now, what I would like just to try to keep the meeting going, and we're not all over the place. I would like Mr. Horn to give his presentation, and then councilors ask their questions, but just to keep, so we're not going all over the audit, if we can actually go section by section on that. That way, I just think we'll get further along, more efficient in this meeting, and that way, different councils might have different opinions on different sections of it. So I just think in the spirit, we'll be moving the meeting better that way. Thank you, Mr. Horn. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I did notice when I came in here, that's a fairly large gavel. So we'll make sure that we don't irritate anyone. I'd like to just say to you that we appreciate the opportunity to do this evaluation of the police department. You have a good police department. You have a good police chief. We found no illegal activity of any kind. You have a good department. Dedicated officers. We were impressed with the union. They were very professional. The individual officers were very professional. The chief is a professional. He was very nice, very respectful. At no time did he ever try to steer us away from anything. Anything we asked for, he gave it to us. In fact, sometimes he gave us more than we asked for. But very easy to work with. Mr. Clark, we worked with, and we appreciate his support and efforts. The town accountant, we worked a great deal with some of her personnel, which I noted in the report, extremely helpful. We were in there quite a few days, constantly asking for things, and she was digging through boxes and finding things, and we appreciate all those efforts. Also, the town clerk's office. We wanted to research some records in there, and she was very helpful. The team that worked on this, 3 out of 4 are here. The first one is the gentleman right over here, Thomas Green. Tom, if you could just stand up so everyone knows who I'm referring to. Tom is a retired captain with the Massachusetts State Police. He ran the district attorney's detective unit for many, many years, the drug unit, the criminal investigative unit. He handled criminal internal affairs investigations in the state police, in local police departments, in courts. He has seen and done it all. His final stint with the state police, He was in charge of quality control and professional standards. His job was to go across this entire state and make sure that the state police, who's certainly a very respected agency in the state, is following the highest professional levels of services and integrity. So he brings a great deal of credibility to the efforts here. Claudia Cataldo, Claudia, if you could just stand up. Claudia has about 25 years. She's a certified municipal clerk. She's an active town accountant. She is, in my opinion, an expert in KVS, which is your financial records system that you have. The other gentleman that was not able to make it is also an expert in IMC, which is your records management system in the police department. I am a public safety director, have been employed as a police officer for about 30 years. I will be sworn in as a lawyer tomorrow morning in Boston. And between the four of us, we have about 120 years of public service in the public sector in Massachusetts. How we do our review, of course, we look at the criteria that's set up. The town manager set up specific criteria that we followed, and then we have kind of our own style of doing things. We don't do an audit the way your independent auditor does. Your independent auditor, and even your town accountant, they reconcile records. If those records do not appear to reconcile with some other information, then they ask questions. And that's particularly how your independent audit is done. They validate and reconcile the records of your treasurer's office, tax collector, and your town account, and then if they have questions, they'll ask whoever might have the answer to that. We actually do it just the opposite. Because if we did it the same way, then really all we would be doing is duplicating services. We actually start out with going out and asking questions. We do what's called a witness-driven investigation. We go out and ask people questions about how finances are done, how grants are handled, how overtime is allotted, and then we go look at the records to verify the information that we're given, if it's in fact accurate, if it's not accurate, and we kind of sort through it almost in a reverse order. And that has worked well for us. And in fact, that gave us an opportunity to find a couple of things that we suspect that your independent auditor might have missed. We were impressed with your town accountant's records, very thorough. I don't know if she's in here.
She is.
Oh, very thorough, and we were pleased to see how her record system came together. We reviewed management letters from your independent auditor that relate to the police department. So we looked at a lot of different things, but really ours is witness-driven. We interview everyone. We interviewed anyone and everyone that wanted to be interviewed that works in the police department, many people who no longer work in the police department, both sworn and civilian staff. I met with the police chief, I believe, 3 times and had approximately a dozen phone calls with him. Captain Green met or had telephone conversations with the lieutenant multiple times. And then we also met a few more times with the union, individual members. The last week, the chief asked to have a conversation, talk about a few things. We actually delayed bringing the report in to have those conversations. So we'd like to think we gave everyone an opportunity to be heard. Now, what happens when you deliver these reports, and I imagine this is the case here, is there are things that people will like, and there are things that people will not like. And so what happens almost immediately is the people who like certain things will try to rally and get everyone to see it their way. The people that find things in this they don't like, they'll try to discredit the people that did the report and attack you that you didn't do a good job. So we're familiar with that, so we're ready to answer questions that might come up like that. We're very comfortable with the report. We believe we've covered everything. And again, you have a good police department, a good chief, and you have a good lieutenant as well. And I think probably we'd open it up to questions. If there's questions that I can answer, I'll answer them. If not, it might be someone else on the team that'll answer it. So we can kind of go whichever way you'd like to go.
Thank you. In the first section, which would be page 6, administration operations, Does anyone have any questions or anything pertaining to this section for Mr. Horn that they would like to discuss? Councilor Peliquin? Yeah.
Given that we're the only people up here who've officially seen this document, I was wondering if you could just maybe do like a really brief summary of just the points in each one,
Sure.
just so that people in the
Yeah.
audience know
That
what.
that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
How brief would you like it?
Well, I don't know.
We
Brief
don't-
enough.
We don't have a big agenda tonight,
okay.
so.
This is the only thing on the agenda, but I don't want people to leave feeling like they
Sure.
haven't, you know.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. So looking at, the first section is called Administrative Operations. And really what we talk about there is how does a police department run? How does this police department run? And what is the makeup of the command staff? So here we have, obviously, the police chief. He has one lieutenant who is outside of the union, so really he has one other person at the executive level to help him manage the police department. And then below that, you have sergeants. Sergeants are your middle management people. Here, I believe you have 7, and they're your middle management people. They kind of run a lot of the on-shift stuff. Or if you have a detective sergeant, he or she would run the detective unit and manage how investigations are done. The chief is the CEO of the department. He oversees everything, but that doesn't mean that he's involved in everything. The lieutenant generally, which is the case here, runs the day-to-day operations and is generally the person that handles most of the mundane discipline. Obviously, if something rises to the chief's level, then the chief will handle it. Your sergeants require and supervise proper performance on their shifts. If it is something that they can't handle, they forward it to lieutenant. Lieutenant will handle discipline if the lieutenant's not comfortable with it, or if it's something that the chief wants to be aware of, the lieutenant will bring it to the chief. And in your department, there's excellent communication between the lieutenant and the chief, so it's safe to say that whatever the lieutenant knows, the chief knows. Police departments often run as an autocratic type of operation, and that simply means that the boss makes the decisions and puts out the orders, and people follow them. And that's pretty much how your chief does, and that's how a lot of police chiefs do it. There's good and bad to that. If you take too much of a centralized command structure, you lose communication with your staff, there can be misinformation, and sometimes it creates a bit of a void. But also, the good side to that is, if you've disciplined your department that way, when you get into a very dangerous or fast-moving, fluid situation, a barricaded suspect or something, your chief can snap out orders and they're followed immediately. So there's pros and cons to that autocratic style. I think that probably is a good summary of that section.
Any councilors have any questions in that section? Councilor Marcucci?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you, Mr. Horn.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
it's nice to hear, from our perspective, that you recognize the professionalism and the respect of our police chief and the members of the police department. I think you're only confirming what most of us know, so I
a good
appreciate
department.
that. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Based upon what you just stated, Mr. Horn, if we look, page 7, section 4, so our chief prefers a more centralized autocratic style. And could you explain that to me?
Sure, and that's not uncommon. What it really means is, again, he makes the decisions, disseminates the orders to the staff. And there are times where Chief Charette also sits with people and says, well, what do you want to do, what do you think? And sometimes that goes back and forth. So he wanders back and forth a little bit. But when we look at a centralized form, we look at it and we make, part of that determination is made by the fact of either very limited employee meetings or in this case, none. Now, there is nothing in any law or any management book that says you should and must have employee meetings. But we would recommend that the chief, for the first year, meet every 3 months, because there's a lot of misinformation in the department on both sides, and I think that that would give a real good bond of communication between everyone. But when we see very few of these meetings or none, that tells us we have a centralized type of management. It's not that I don't care what you have to say, it's that I'm going to make the decisions on my own.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
You all set?
Yes, I am, thank you for that.
Anyone else? Go ahead, proceed, thank you.
Okay, so I believe the next section,
Looks like training.
Yeah.
next section is training.
Yes.
Training opportunities, they need to improve. There is a lack of funding. The chief has indicated that there is a lack of funding. There's been somewhat of a downward trend, in our opinion, of his budget.
Page 9.
And that happens. We're in tight times. In my town, we've had that same problem. But that's an important issue that the chief has to address. And every indication that we have in the last few months, he has done an excellent job of improving training opportunities. When we see a lot of training opportunities that you have to pay for on your own, that's not really a good way to do things. If the town expects the police officers to be at a certain professional level, you have to pay for it. You get what you pay for. But the chief's hands have been somewhat tied. It's been difficult, as he's explained to us, to be able to do some of these things, and they can be very expensive. You've got to pay for the courses, and you've got to often pay overtime for them to go. We'd like to see improvement in that training area, and honestly, by the time we got here, it appears that the chief has already addressed that, and there's some indications from the staff that there have been more training opportunities, and I think really the only comment we have about that is we hope the chief continues in that direction, and the indications I get from the staff is that they hope he continues in that direction, and the sense I get from Chief Charette is that is the direction he plans to go in. Now, in order for him to do that, that means that the Finance Committee and the legislative body of this town and the town manager have to recognize that need and try to find that money. Training, of course, is very important. Police officers are mandated under statute to have certain types of training, in-service training, domestic violence training, first aid, CPR. Those are all things that the chief must give for that training. It's not if he wants to. He must give it. He must qualify them with their weapons. Your insurance carrier probably would like to see him qualified 2 or 3 times a year. These are things he must do, and they cost money. And as a chief and the captain who ran a large organization, we can tell you that those are expensive undertakings. But he also can't spend the money if he doesn't have it. It is illegal for him to spend in a deficit except in very specific circumstances, of which this is not one. So he knows he's required to do this training, but he can't do it if he doesn't have the money. And that covers training.
Any questions right now on training? Good, thank you.
Personnel. Over probably about 2 months, we interviewed, as I said, pretty much everyone that wanted to be interviewed. Some people we interviewed multiple times. And to be honest with you, they were kind of a little bit all over the place. The department, by far the majority, thinks that the chief is a great human being, nice man, and a good dad. I'm assuming he's also a good husband. Certainly haven't heard anything to the contrary. And honestly, we think he's a good guy too. He's very easy to talk to. I sat with him and gave him some real tough love. It was nothing that I would have liked to have heard. And I have to tell you, he never lost his cool. He asked a lot of questions. He didn't immediately try to say, you've got it wrong. He didn't try to say, they're lying. He listened. And I imagine when I left, he evaluated it. And, you know, we are convinced that he wants to have a good relationship with the department. Every one of us, if we're evaluated, can make changes. None of us are perfect. If Chief Charette came to my department, he could probably find 400 things that I should do differently. These are our opinions. Some of them are very clear that should be done. Some of them really depend on his own management style. But he took that really well. And I have to say, same with the union. Same with the police officers. They got a little bit of tough love. They took it very well. They've never told us that they're trying to overthrow the chief. In fact, the comments I've heard from them is, we want to work it out, we want to bury the hatchet, not in each other's head, and we want to move forward. None of them, the majority of them, do not want the chief to leave. They just like to see him perhaps take a greater interest in what they think is important. So when we came here, we thought maybe we'd find this really huge mess. We really didn't find a huge mess. We found a lot of miscommunication, a lot of they think they know what they're talking about on either side, and they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. And people in the department are a little quick to put up their walls, and even in town government, we found a little quick to put up their walls. You got to be willing to sit down and listen to people, even when they tell you something you don't want to hear. So as far as the personnel goes, you've got a great department. They just need to talk to each other. And, the chief has to recognize that for the guys to write a letter to the town manager, they clearly felt they were not being heard. So I imagine sitting here tonight, the chief probably will take the position in the future, I'm going to make sure that it's very clear to them that I'm listening to them. And they have to do the same for him. And the town manager has to do the same as well. Everyone's going to be willing to sit down and agree to disagree, but not yell and scream or anything else. You got to just sit down and work it out. We're all adults. You got a good police department. You really do. You got a chief that absolutely cares about his department. Maybe they don't think he does sometimes, but they don't understand the political pressure that he's under. The town manager runs a pretty tight ship. There's no question about it. And the chief works for him, and he has to try to make sure he's happy. The town manager works for you. And I imagine you run a tight ship. So he has to make sure that he keeps you happy. And everyone sitting at this table works for all the people sitting out here. And with our 120 years in public service, we know how difficult it is to make them happy. So everyone's under some stress here. I think you just need to take a deep breath and try to respect the other's stress and opinions. Morale was low, not real bad. We've seen a lot worse, hovering around a 4 or a 5. Not really that bad, but not where we'd like to see it. But the general sense is it's on the rise. It is clearly on the rise. I don't know what people would have said to us if we were here a year ago, but I know that when we got here and we started talking to people, the place was on the way up, not on the way down. So the problems that you've experienced in your police department, I think, are behind you. And I think you're headed in the right direction. And that's the sense we got from the staff. The chief absolutely has to reevaluate how he's done some things. So does the staff, so does the town manager, so does the finance committee and the council. We've got to all work together. You need a strong, cohesive police department. These guys are very committed to the town, very committed. I was surprised to see that the chief doesn't have an employment contract. You don't pay to send them to the police chiefs conference. There's chiefs in towns a quarter the size of this town that send their chiefs to that conference. You should be sending him. He will learn a great deal there. There are some incredibly smart people there. He should be going to that. He should have an employment contract. With a contract, he's going to feel a little more confident in making decisions. He's in a somewhat precarious position. Without a contract or any rights to continued employment, he's in a little bit of a dangerous spot. Sure, he has civil service protection, there's civil service issues, but nevertheless, he should have an employment contract. He should enjoy the same benefits that every other chief in the area has. And he should be held accountable if he doesn't do his job and fix the issues in the police department. That's pretty much it on personnel. The only thing left in that part is staff comments. and I just want to briefly, I'm not going to repeat any of them. These are comments that we paraphrase from people. I always do that because it's important for you to kind of get a feel for what's said. We are not telling you that anything in those comments is correct. In fact, there's some stuff in there that we don't agree with. There's some stuff in there we do kind of agree with. But it's important for the chief and for the council and the town manager to get a little bit of a feel of some of the stuff that's being said inside. Now, some people will take away from this only what they want to hear. If you cherry pick this report, you do a disservice to your community. There's good in here and there's bad in here. Take it all together. Don't look at the chief and say, aha, you didn't do this right, and forget all the good things in the report. Don't look at the report and say, you know what, chief's good to go, let it go. You gotta take the whole report. That's what you paid for. The good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. We do want to just touch base a little bit on the lieutenant. Yes?
We don't have an opportunity to go
Yeah.
area by area?
Yeah.
Before we get to the lieutenant?
Yeah.
I can wait now if you want. I was just going to summarize some of the staff comments, but I can wait.
Certainly. Councilor Nicola, you have a
Thank you.
question?
Thank you. On page 10, discussion personnel, I'm not going to be pigeonholed in saying that I like this report or I dislike this report. I'm going to reserve that for another time. However, I'm a bit confused in the first paragraph, 14, and it sounds to me a little bit that you are too, in that we have all kinds of things going on here. It's very difficult for me to understand whether or not I have a chief that is a disciplinarian or too nice of a guy. This doesn't tell me which is more accurate, and that's a concern. And I'm kind of getting that flavor. I understand that you do your audits differently than the type of audit that we're used to, which is really more numbers. This is a little bit not numbers, and so you're going to get a bunch of different opinions from a wide variety of personnel that are under the chief. But I don't get any impression from a paragraph like this as to whether or not, and I mean, I know the chief. I think we all know the chief. We work with the chief very closely. He's very, very much a part of what we do here as well as what he does down at the PD. And yet, this, if I didn't know the chief, wouldn't help me to know the chief. It tells me what the people in his department might think. Maybe you spoke to somebody who had just been disciplined, so he's a hard ass. Or somebody who got away with something or got just a pat on, just a pat and told, don't do it again, so he's easy. But it doesn't tell me what you think the chief is in terms of a disciplinarian. I'm just using this as an example.
Sure.
Can you help me out there?
Absolutely. I'm not all confused with this paragraph. I think it's, in my opinion, it's very clear. The majority of the staff thinks he's a good person. The majority of the staff does not like the way he manages the department. And you will see in this report later on where I say that we recommend and think he should be a little more assertive. So I think I'm pretty clear on that.
But you end it by saying you did find extensive corrective action that he has taken during his tenure.
Correct. Right. Yep. We did find extensive corrective action that was taken. However, based on our overall opinion, looking at the whole department, we do think there are times where he needs to be a little more assertive. We do think that. And I do say that in the report, so I'm not all confused with that. What we're telling you is that there are two opinions of him. Love him as a person, not happy with the way he runs the department. The union, majority of the union, if you will, would like to see a more regimented and disciplined department. However, when they say that, there's a suggestion that there's no discipline. Yet when we take a look at the chief's operations related to discipline, we in fact find a fairly substantial record of discipline. So at some point a little later on, you'll see where I say they need to come together. What does the chief think the discipline should be in the department? What do the officers think it is? And look for common ground. Because managing discipline in the department, whether any of us like it or not, is a team effort through the collective bargaining agreement, the union, and the chief, and of course, civil service.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
that.
I'll say, Counselor?
For now, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Counselor Carrasco?
Mr. Horn, I want to thank you and your team for coming out and doing
you,
this.
sir.
I do have a question in regards to, it's kind of what Councilor Nicola has said. But my question is in regards to his disciplinary. During your course of your investigation, was there any mistreatment of an employee or mentioned or interpreted as such? Is there something that we should be concerned of?
Generally, we're pleased with the way the chief runs the department. There was an incident that we think was not handled particularly well. We've discussed it with the chief, we've discussed it with the union, it went through the grievance process, it was resolved, and all of our indications were that it is in the past. In that particular situation, I think there was some confusion, a misunderstanding, and the chief probably should have taken more time to understand it before he took the action that he did, but he didn't. He took action. The union took him to task on it, and the chief at some point agreed that it was a mistake, made the change, and made an apology. And interestingly, the person that involved, it's from everything we've seen since that time, has had an excellent working relationship. So we're pleased to see that there was no retribution. Sometimes when you prove someone or you make someone appear to be wrong, we all know how that works. They say, oh, I'll get that person when I get the chance. We didn't see any of that. No animosity, no grudges. But there was a situation where we think it could have been handled better. In retrospect, I'm sure the chief would tell you, yep, that might have been the situation I could have handled better. We've all faced that. As long as it's behind us, and it seems to be a fairly isolated situation, we were comfortable with it.
Now my question to you, as the person providing this audit to us as a council and to the public, why was it not included in your report? What was your feeling? Why you didn't include it in the report?
Because that wasn't, sometimes if you put those situations in, then it becomes the focus of the report. So we try to be careful how much we put in about any one particular situation, because we don't want it to dominate the report. But of course, if you want us to discuss it, we'll be happy to discuss it with you.
Now, one more question. Now, you started mentioning morale of the department. Do you think that the morale was the major problem prior to the letter? Because I know you've mentioned that before you getting here, if you were here a year prior, obviously our chief and the department is moving in the right direction.
Yes.
But do you think that the morale was the issue that started the letter? And started the audit?
No. The morale was a contributing factor.
Okay.
The situation that you asked me about a moment ago about an employee, that was another significant factor that played into it. Budget constraints is a big factor. Lack of proper equipment and an inability to get that equipment was a big factor. And there is no doubt that part of this also was the fact that the union's without a contract for a period of time. That exacerbated things. Now, it is important to point out that some people wanted us, I guess, to believe that this is all about the union not having a contract. Unless we asked them about that, they never even mentioned it. We are convinced that the stalled contract negotiations aren't helping matters any, but we are absolutely convinced that they are not behind that letter, nor are they the primary issue here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll say, Counselor. Anyone else? Counselor Marcucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Horn, in the morale, in the staff comments,
Yes.
there's one mention here that someone, an officer in the police department, had mentioned something about a cruiser doesn't have a lock for an AR-15 and the button open trunk is readily available. Now, based off of what you heard from employees, did you, as a company, follow up on that to find out if that is in fact true some of the statements that I see from multiple officers are concerned
About
about
equipment?
small equipment, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you follow up on that?
On that particular issue, I'll defer to the captain if he wants to address it, but I can tell you that we definitely followed up on equipment. I rode in probably half of your fleet. I patrolled your town with your officers for probably 30, 35 hours. I rode in your detective vehicles. I examined guns, had lengthy discussions about your radio system. So yes, we certainly looked at that stuff. I inspected trunks of some of your police cars. So we did a fair amount on that. Captain, did you want to add anything to that particular AR-15 issue?
Yeah, just this broadcast goes out to everybody in the community, but it is a safety and security issue with a weapon. And I would assume, since this has been made public, that there's no weapon stored in that vehicle unless a lock has been put on it at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we do want to be careful what we say here tonight about certain tactical or security issues so that we don't compromise the chief's operations. But we certainly went through the vehicles. We spent a great deal of time in them.
And we will discuss that at some point.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Councilor Vandal.
Thank you. On page 11, number 17, morale at current is 5 currently. Detective Bureau should be fully staffed. Patrol level should be 39. Detective Bureau needs cars urgently. Southbridge has population approximately 17,500 and realistically around 25. Could you explain that one for me?
Yeah, this is information that we received from the police department, and generally what they refer to is that you have people that are often not registered voters or registered residents in your community, and there's no question that Southbridge has a fair amount of that. So you have a higher population than you actually think that you have. And we all know historically across the country that causes significant problems for government based on your aid levels and stuff, because they think, well, no, you have 17.5, and you know you really have more like 25. So that's pretty common. You do have urban problems here. Even though you're a town, you are faced with more city-type problems. And we know that firsthand because, again, I went on patrol with your detectives, with your patrol officers. In fact, I personally witnessed a drug transaction when I was waiting to meet an officer. So you have urban problems, and you need to have a fully staffed detective unit. The chief's working in that direction. I think the chief now has them at full staff, or very close.
Not where we'd like to be.
Okay. You do have crime in this town. You have city crime in this town. It seems like every time I'm having a phone conversation with the chief, I'm hearing about a shooting or a stabbing or something. You have big city problems here. He needs a proper police department to deal with that. And your detectives are critical to some of those issues.
And then it says Southbridge has population. Southbridge has urban problems, welfare office in town, low-income housing, numerous three-deckers, many non-working residents, highest teen pregnancy, number 348 on a poverty level, 77% of students get free lunch. Southbridge handles approximately 15,000 actual calls. And here you are requesting 3 cars for the Detective Bureau, 3 cruisers a year, 3 brand-new cruisers every year, and, I mean, we can't...
How are you going to pay for it?
We can't afford it. I mean, here you are, 3 deckers, poor people.
Well, let me correct you. That's titled staff comments. That's not my comments. That's staff comments. But
We'll layer it out. We'll layer it out right now. I mean, I don't care if it's staff problems.
well, you're saying that I'm saying that. I didn't say that.
Okay.
All right? I did say you need to purchase 3 cars a year. You do. There's no question. For him to have an adequate fleet, you need to rotate them out. You have detective cars that have well over 100,000 miles. In fact, I think one off the top of my head is well over 150,000 miles on it. It shouldn't even be on the road. Shouldn't even be on the road. It costs a lot of money to have a police department. And I know that you don't want to hear some of these recommendations. If I was sitting in the audience or sitting in your seat, I probably wouldn't want to hear them.
Well,
It's tough.
I know a lot of people that don't want to hear it.
Yeah, and
We were at the point we were giving them 2 a year.
Yeah.
2 would have been max for me, I'll tell you right
Yeah.
now.
well, these are our recommendations. You guys have to work that out. But in fairness, you're kind of proving our case. We're telling you that the chief doesn't have what he needs, and you're kind of approving that you don't think you can give it to him.
I don't think that we
Yeah.
can afford 3 a year.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to pay 2 a year.
Yeah, and maybe
Okay.
the chief can work out a different arrangement. You can look at municipal leases where you can purchase these cars, spread them out over a couple of years. Maybe the chief could live with 2, maybe he could live with 2.5. But our recommendation is 3, not more than 3, not less than 3, 3. But this is just our recommendation. You have to decide what you can afford.
And then on personnel, we have 34 policemen now, and you want to bring us up to 40?
Well, what
I had an understanding, the chief knows how I feel about that. See, he's shaking his head, yeah. I've told him 100 times, you give me a cold body, and I'll give you a warm one. And I don't think we need up to 40 policemen.
And I respect that. But you didn't ask us to come here and tell you what you wanted to hear. You asked us to come in and tell you what we thought.
I understand.
You are understaffed. You had a department that was staffed, I believe, at 39, 6 to 7 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's where you should be headed. And you should also move to civilian dispatches, which will redeploy 4 police officers into the street.
That's another, so then you're up to 44.
No, we're suggesting that you take the 4 police officers that are generally committed to the shifts, to dispatch, deploy them out on the street, so you'll increase from 34 officers up an additional 4, with a limited impact to you, because dispatchers will make less money. You will save on overtime. Their overtime is not as high as the police officers, and you're paying a fair amount of overtime to cover open dispatch shifts. So if you redeploy those 4 officers, we're not suggesting that above going to 39. We're suggesting that is the first step you should take, move the civilian dispatchers and get those officers out in the street. Now, there are people that don't like that idea for a variety of reasons. One of the legitimate reasons is that you have a busy lobby. Well, you do have a fairly busy lobby. It's not that busy, but you do have a fairly busy lobby. So the argument is that if we have a police officer on the desk, he or she can answer those calls and we don't have to pull a car off the street. There's some truth to that. But if you redeploy those officers, you could even make that officer a station officer, where he still handles those calls in the lobby, yet when something big hits, he can leave and go the call. Because you rely very heavily on mutual aid with the state police and other agencies on too regular of a basis. So, and that's problematic, because when you call in outside people, they've got to find you. They don't have necessarily radio interoperability, and they don't necessarily know where they're going. So we would like to see you redeploy those officers. We think that's the first step towards bringing the department up to full staff. And the chief may say, when he gets those 4 officers out, you know what, I can live with this. I'm okay. And you can do it each year. We're not suggesting that you tomorrow hire 5 full-time dispatchers and redeploy those officers. Maybe you first hire a dispatcher for the day shifts, then the second shift. You can do it in, multiple years, but you've got to get in that direction. That's where you need to be. I know it costs money. I don't know what to tell you. This is the same problem I hear anywhere in the world I go. It's the exact same problem I have in my own town. It's really hard. Municipalities are really under the gun. But you didn't ask us to come here and tell you about your municipality. You asked us to come here and tell you about your police department.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
All set, Counsel?
Thank you, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counsel Clements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
On that note, on your last comments about why we brought you here, it was my understanding, and it was explained by Councilor Langevin, who's a big proponent, and others, we're here to discuss and to refresh and find out where we have inadequacies and where we can fix them, and that's exactly what you appear to be doing for us. And as former Councilor Regis would point out, we may not like what we hear, because where's the money going to come from? We all sat up there and listened to Councilor Regis tell us that. not that she had to, because we should be aware that these suggestions cost money, and we have to make the hard decisions as to whether we support them with taxpayer money or not. So I just really wanted to point that out, because you make a lot of recommendations, and I applaud you for them. However, obviously, it's going to be a decision that council now, council in the future will have to keep up with. In terms of civilian dispatch, do you have a number or percentage of towns, communities that are using civilian dispatch in
I don't have,
Massachusetts?
yeah,
or
certainly the majority,
the majority?
by far the majority. Yes, no question. I can't give you exact numbers, but if you were to call E911, they could give you exact numbers.
Okay, great.
But there is no doubt it is by far the majority.
Okay. And in terms, I mean, when we hire officers, they are a liability forever in terms of pension and, you know, the future here of the cost to our community. You have to remember that. Maybe a lot of people don't realize that when our municipal workers retire, they're entitled to a lot of benefits in terms of their retirement from the community, which we're trying to catch up with now, as are most communities in Massachusetts. When you do civilian dispatch, that's a different set of rules? Or,
Well,
and can you do part-time? I mean, I'm just curious on some of the...
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that. They're not a Group 4 employee, okay, under state law. So they're a little different as far as their retirement. They don't necessarily leave at 55 and a certain percentage of pay. You can do part-time. You can do all full-time. What we would recommend to you is that you do the bulk of the shift coverages full-time, and then you have some part-timers to augment them. It helps you with overtime issues, and it certainly helps you when you just can't get anyone into work. They do have the right, under statute, under labor law, to organize, so of course that's something that you have to keep in mind. But we would recommend, and again, I would really defer to the chief to see what his thoughts are on that, but I would probably recommend 4 full-time dispatches is where you want to get to. And then probably 5 part-time dispatchers. You do not want to have a lot of part-time people, because then they work very few shifts and they don't stay sharp. And you do have to pay to keep them certified as E911 operators, and also for EMD, emergency medical dispatching. You must keep them certified. So I wouldn't recommend, and then you have other liability issues, and injury issues that you have to deal with. So I wouldn't suggest that you hire 25 part-time dispatchers. It will be a scheduling nightmare for the chief. But we'd like to see you go in that direction.
Thank you very much. Maybe perhaps that's something we can discuss at a PPP meeting more in depth. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's that? Councilor Moriarty.
Thank you. Similar, it wasn't really planning at the moment, excuse me, to build off the dispatch part, but I agree with what the audit kind of reports there. I think that would be very beneficial and similar to what I know Charlton does next door to us. A lot of times, or in some cases, they have the auxiliary staff kind of working that, and I think that is kind of a nice middle ground as well. More so as to what I was looking to find out at the moment is you would reference briefly as far as the radio system and the radio equipment. The council, both last year and prior, has authorized and voted to spend a great sum of money, and this may be a better question for the manager, to have spent literally tens of thousands, possibly over 100,000 on radio equipment that was supposed to kind of bring us up to par. And here, fairly routinely throughout the staff comments that this is a big issue, dead spots, radios are horrible. A lot of them feel it's a very big safety issue, no radio contact at the high school, and we know a lot of the issues that have gone on at the high school. It's how is it that we've spent this money, the Black Mirror Road project, everything else, and that this is still an ongoing safety problem to this date?
I'm happy to address.
Pick up after the
I think
town
one of
manager.
the things that folks need to keep in mind is that there is some fluidity to this. Some of these problems that have been mentioned are problems that quite honestly are probably a couple years old. Obviously, the chief and I have worked diligently towards having solutions to it. When the school came online in September of last year, It was noted that there was a dead spot in there. I think that was actually fire and police that had identified that to us. And we did ask council for money to go out and do the radio system. I think the radio system, I don't know if that's fully operational or just fairly recently became fully operational, where we did put a repeater up on Blackmare Road. So some of these corrections have taken time, as the budgeting process takes time. But, you know, and I want the council to be, you know, very aware that, you know, nothing happens in a vacuum. We've been aware of these, but it takes time and money and resources to get them accomplished. And as we become aware of it, we have worked towards solving some of these issues. And I know the Blackmare one is one that we knew that, and what we didn't do was do a Band-Aid of just doing a repeater in the school itself. We actually did a study to see that up at Blackmare Road, we would actually cover greater areas and a greater extent of the town to resolve a larger problem, because quite honestly, we did hear what the rank and file said, that there were other dead spots. But that is, you know, a work in progress. And I think I heard as of, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, there was some trees that grew up too high and continue to block some areas. So we just had that reported to me, I think, within the last couple of weeks. So, you know, we're aware of it, and we are working on it. So some of this is a snapshot in time, and some of this has been made aware. I think to the point, and I may have more comments at the end, that, you know, as we become aware, we are working on resolving issues as they emerge. So I just want to kind of at least point that out in terms of this.
Radio migration is complicated, difficult, and highly technical. For you to have, well, there's really almost no possibility for you to have 100% coverage unless you have a blank checkbook, which Mr. Vandal seems to indicate that you do not have. I would guess for you to have 90% coverage in this town is going to cost you more than $1 million. You're going to have to move to a simulcast system. A simulcast system requires multiple listening posts, if you will, around your community, and then a primary or two primary transmission points. And what happens is wherever you transmit from, a voting system takes a vote. It looks at who's got the best signal here. The tower in the east end of town, the tower in the west, the tower at the high school, and in a millionth of a second, it determines who has the best, and it repeats out simultaneously throughout the whole system on 2 or more transmission antennas. They must be exactly synchronized so that they transmit at the same time, otherwise you end up with junk, you end up with garble. For that type of a system, you will be easily over $1 million. Radio equipment can easily cost you $100,000. Just to equip your police and your fire with proper radio system, easily over $100,000 without ever touching the issues. This town probably geographically, and it's not for us to evaluate, that'd be something Motorola would do. They come in with a computer program and they will do all your elevations. But I'd bet if you really want to address that, you're talking $1 million for a simulcast system. Big money, huge. Makes the cars look small. Anything further on that part?
Not on the radio itself, no.
And that generally is a problem for your portables. Your portables, are you high band or ultra high? So you got 5 watts? Okay, so your portables are at 5 watts, your cars are probably 35 watts with what's called a high dB gain antenna on the roof. It's usually a 5 dB gain, so it can quadruple the power when it transmits. So your problems are with your portables. And the only way to deal with that is to either have more powerful portables, which do not exist, or to have more antennas so that you're closer to an antenna when you talk. I do want to talk just a little bit about personnel comments, if we're ready for that.
I think
Yes,
one
sir.
more at the moment. This was another one of the staff comments, and whether or not the data is accurate on that, and I'm not, I don't know, but there was a comment, this was page 14, comment paragraph 28, where an individual stated approximately 21 officers have retired, demoted, transferred out, or have been forced to resign in the last 11 years. Assuming that number is accurate or very close to being accurate, recognizing that being a police officer is an extremely stressful, difficult position, and I'm sure there's a good deal of turnover for numerous reasons. just coming from the outside looking at that, is 21 officers, by one way or another, leaving the department in 11 years, is that a standard turnover, high turnover, low turnover?
Well, we'd have to verify each and every one of them. We didn't really look at that. But that's kind of high, but it really depends on the agency. If you've got a lot of people that are at that age where they're going to retire, then it's not high. It's not uncommon to have a department that has a large turnover because a lot of them came on at the same time. Police officers, you spend a great deal, over $100,000 to train a police officer. When you look at what it costs to send them to the academy, you got to pay their salary, and you got to pay to replace them. It's well over $100,000. You spend a lot of money. You make a huge investment in those police officers. They're almost like a sports player. If you don't have a good contract, and the next team, in this case the next town over, has a good contract, they're going to jump around. Which is why when you deal with contract negotiations, you got to try to hold the line, yet at the same time try to be competitive, which is a double-edged sword. We all know that. But officers have left, officers have been removed, and officers have retired. So it seems high, but if you break it down, and that's really something that probably your human services department would do, your personnel director might do, you could take a closer look at that.
That would be me.
Well, we'll add that to the town manager's job, but it really depends on a lot of issues.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Counsel?
In these employment personnel comments, there's a fair amount of attacks on the lieutenant. So I want to be clear about something. Captain Green interviewed the lieutenant numerous times. We find the lieutenant to be competent. We find him to be a good lieutenant. We find him to be a suitable replacement for Chief Charette when he retires in 30 years. So we don't want there to be any misunderstanding. We don't approve of his flex schedule. We don't approve of anyone in the department have a flex schedule. But he's a good lieutenant, competent, and he had a very good understanding of the issues in the department. He also is the primary day-to-day disciplinarian. And as I always say, if I'm not getting complaints on you, you must not be doing your job. So we're not suggesting that he is perfect. There's issues that he has to address like everyone else. But I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that he's the devil. He's not. And the officers, for the most part, seem to like him. He needs to have a standardized schedule. Everyone in the department does, particularly when you're understaffed. You can't have flex schedules. They will get you in trouble. The next part, if you're ready, is civil service.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Counsel Carrasco.
Mr. Horn, before you move on, do you think that going to the lieutenant and asking about this flex hours, you do not agree with the schedule?
We do not agree with the schedule. And actually, I think I'll ask Mr. Green to come up. He talked at length about that. Would you like to expand upon that a bit? And we don't agree for that for anyone.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, councilors. Mr. Clark. When you're dealing with flex schedules, it makes it difficult. A police department operates under a chain of command. There's always an OIC. A sergeant reports to the lieutenant, or the chief, or the lieutenant reports to the chief. What I found was several of the officers had made comments, as are indicated in that report, that they don't know sometimes when the lieutenant's working. And that makes it tough or more difficult on a sergeant to say, who's in charge? Am I in charge, or is there a lieutenant working and he's in charge? Who should make the call in this case? And that was what I found is to be a little bit of an issue. And it wasn't that the lieutenant didn't put 40 hours a weekend. He does. It's just that he could sometimes circumvent his regular shift and a day shift, work an evening shift at night, and grab a detail during the day. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with what he did. The only thing is accountability as an officer. If the chief comes down and says, where's my lieutenant? Is the lieutenant working today, or is he on a detail? It makes it a little confusing. Just put up the calendar. This is when the lieutenant works. If you can be a little bit flexible with that, he could work a Tuesday and Thursday evening shift and could work a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the whole department knows. Today's Friday, he's on a day shift. We know. And that's all that was meant by that. But sometimes when you read that staff comments, it seemed like the lieutenant's name popped up in there on 4 occasions. And again, he is the disciplinarian of the department. He metes out the punishment. So maybe that might have been a little bit of it, but it was confusing to some of the guys when I spoke to them. And all we're suggesting is that he has a schedule that everybody's aware of.
Now, the schedule, was it for personal gain in regards to getting details, or it's just this is the way it operates?
Sometimes he could be needed at night, and in lieu of coming in on overtime, he would come in. Sometimes it was to work details. If details were available and he was up for it, he could swap his shift and work an evening shift.
All set, Counsel?
Yes, sir.
Counsel Moriarty.
Just as a follow-up to your last statement, if he is a salaried employee, there's no such thing as overtime per se then?
Correct.
And
He's not a salaried
Well-
employee.
he's not a salaried?
No.
Okay. Was Lieutenant, and I know you had, or Mr. Horn had noted that you spoke with Mr. Lieutenant Woodson a few times as well. Was the flex schedule something that was brought to his attention as a concern, and was there a discussion there at all with him?
At the time I met with the lieutenant, and we did meet on a Sunday for over 3 hours on his own time at the police department. We discussed it. I told him it was an issue. He agreed with me, and he said he was in discussions with the chief on it already. So it's probably a matter that's already been addressed.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark.
Just, actually, this was something interesting in the union contract. There was a specific reference to a lieutenant being able, or the lieutenant's position being able to do details. And I believe it may have been a previous lieutenant that had that arrangement. So that was something that had been a departmental practice that had been put into place. So when an issue came up, actually, staff and I looked at this in terms of the lieutenant and looked at the language, looked at the long-term history of it, and we did, say to him that it was okay for him to do that. I would say I wasn't intimately familiar with the whole flex schedule and how that worked, so I thought that was actually an eye-opening piece, to this, and the ramifications of that, I thought, was helpful for you guys to bring out.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
appreciate that.
And just to clarify, too, it's been brought to my attention that he's not the only one that's allowed sometimes to work a flex schedule. So it's something that should be looked at department-wide and make the best needs of the department.
All set, Counsel? Thank you.
Easy answer to that is, if you're working the day shift and you have the opportunity to take a detail, take a vacation day, provided the chief allows you to make it on that short of a notice. That brings us to civil service compliance. So just to summarize this a little bit for the people at home and out here in the audience, we were asked to look at if the town police department was in compliance with civil service issues. And frankly, there's only a couple of things that were brought to our attention, and we did look at those. Just briefly, there's an open lieutenant's position. There was some question why that's not being filled. That's for the town to decide. It might be a budget issue. I'm not sure what the issue is. We certainly recommend that you fill the open lieutenant's position. If you have a certified list, if you have an eligible person, we believe that should be filled. Let me back up for 1 second. Is the lieutenant's position salary? Well, if he has a set amount of money that he receives, whether he works 1 hour or 40 hours, then he would normally be salaried. Now, that does not mean that he cannot work additional hours for some type of compensation, such as he can work details. He would not generally be eligible for overtime if he's salary, but and what we found was that if he worked on grants, there was an opportunity for someone to be paid out of those grants to work on those issues. It's our opinion the chief can do that, and it would seem to me that he would determine what would be an overtime rate, would be what he would pay them for that. Doesn't have to do it, but the grant does allow for it. So that's on the lieutenant's position. There was, there seemed to be a lot of talk about the assessment center, on how that sergeant's position was filled. When you have a situation where you don't have a certified list, or if everyone fails the sergeant's test or lieutenant's test or whatever it might be, you can petition civil service for an assessment center. You have to agree to their terms. You have to sign paperwork with them that you adhere to their terms. They monitor it, and they physically attend it and monitor it. There was a lot of talk about the fact that the chief's friends with the people that did this. Dwayne Sampson's a retired police chief in the town of Shrewsbury. He runs the public safety consulting firm that did the assessment center. And yes, Chief Charette is friends with him. We believe that it was handled correctly because the chief stepped away from it. The town manager handled the entire process. The town manager bid it out, similar to the way we won the bid to do this. He interviewed people, he looked at documents, qualifications, and the town manager solely awarded the bid, not the police chief, the town manager. He followed 30B, he followed any procurement requirements, he did everything according to your charter, your bylaw. We don't have any issues with how that assessment center was utilized. We can say that because it went a certain way, that there must have been something wrong. Okay, but we were not provided any evidence that supported that. Sure, there's a lot of people that think different things, but that's how life is. We all have a different opinion of why something is. In the time I've delivered this report, I've heard that we are covering for the chief, we are too mean to the chief, we beat up the union, we sided with the union. It's just amazing the stuff that people hear and things that people say. But that is, perception is not always reality. We didn't find anything wrong with that assessment center. There are no appeals, no complaints lodged with civil service. That is the proper procedure. Now, if there was a complaint or an appeal request before civil service, well, we'd evaluate that and take a closer look at it. There haven't been any. Interestingly, we interviewed Mr. Sampson, at lengthy interview. And we're, again, very comfortable how the process went, that the monitor was involved from civil service, objectively independent third party neutral. And also, Mr. Sampson indicated to us that he was willing to come out and meet with anyone that wanted to see how this process went and evaluate it. He's not required to do that, but he agreed to do it. And to date, no one's asked to see that. So we think that the assessment center was handled properly in the absence of any credible evidence to otherwise. The other issue we did take a look at is the residency law. Here in Massachusetts, civil service requires a residency. I think it's 10 miles. A little back and forth. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's some talk that the civil service requirement is 9 or 10. I think it's 10. Non-civil service police departments are, in fact, 15 miles. We are not a big fan of civil service. We think it's a problem for a lot of things. It makes no sense to us to have two standards for municipal police officers. Either you should be 10 miles from the jurisdiction or 15. Frankly, I don't care which it is, but it shouldn't be different. We would suggest to the town that you proceed carefully on enforcing that civil service requirement. It hasn't been enforced many times. It's a fluid situation. There is some discussions about changing it, removing it, or adopting the 15 miles. So we would suggest that you move carefully on that. The one thing we would say about it is if you decide to enforce it, someone can make an argument, you don't even have to impact bargain. It's state law. We would encourage you to try to work it out with members of your union. These people moved where they believed that they could live. And now they're saying, well, it has to be in the Commonwealth. These people moved and bought homes so that they could raise their children and live their private lives, what they believe was in compliance with the law. So we would suggest to you, if you feel you need to do something with that, you should proceed carefully, not only for the issue of potential litigation, but you're dealing with people's lives. And in this economy, it is very difficult to sell a house unless you're willing to give it away. So something to think about. There weren't any other issues brought to our attention on civil service. Technology, one of the, I'm sorry, question?
Thank
I
you,
apologize.
Mr. Horn. Through you, Mr. Chair. On the civil service compliance, Mr. Horn, and maybe the chief or the town manager could also answer this, because I'm not sure. Does civil service actually do the scoring when you have an assessment center? Give the test?
I'm going to defer to the chief because I know he's intimately familiar with it. Chief?
when they, pardon me, when they do these exams, the exams are actually scored in part by the people who are sitting on the panel. There is in fact a person from civil service there the entire time. Those scores are then given to that person. That person verifies the score and still does the final score. But just as if you had taken a written exam, you have every right to appeal that score. The same processes exist throughout the entire piece. And I don't believe that any of those scores were appealed. So the scores were given, verified by civil service, allowed for appeal, and exact same process if you had taken. And just on a quick side note, I didn't do that without meeting with the union. We had 2 meetings, we talked about it first. You know, gosh, nobody passed the regular written exam, and I must say that was pretty much the standard statewide. There was a tremendous failure rate on it. So we talked about it. What do you guys think? Do you want to look at this, do this? This is what it's about. After the second meeting, we decided to go forward, and then it was brought to Mr. Clark, and the request was made to the council for the funds to do that.
I do believe that when Chief Sampson administered that exam, he did have, I think, a numeric score at the end, if I remember that right, because I think the top 2, we actually picked one of those top 2.
Well, yes,
that
literally,
came out
just
of that.
like a
So
written exam.
there was a numerical
Right.
score given to that, as I recall.
But those scores are given to the civil service monitor, and they are the ones who actually accept that score, or they may change it. I don't know in this case. I stayed out of the room. I stayed out of it.
Chief, what do you mean that they might change the score? You said the assessment center does the scoring. As
They
does
literally-
civil service, are they part of that scoring process?
I do not
You
know
don't
with
know.
this one, if they
Okay.
sat there and put a number on it.
Right.
I do know that none of those scores mean anything until civil service
service
has them.
has to certify.
And in this
Okay.
particular case, the woman who is the head of their testing, I believe was here, Ms.
She was.
Fitzgibbons. And she literally takes those and verifies that she believes that's accurate, and that, then and only then does that become their score.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
What's that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on civil service? Technology, we did take an in-depth look at your technology. We call it IMC, Information Management Corporation Software, but it's been bought out by TriTech. But the records management system that your department has is very popular, and throughout southern Worcester County for sure, and even beyond, it's a very popular program, so we certainly think that you picked a good product. All of us as chiefs have our complaints with it, and are often looking at other alternatives, some competitors currently out of Connecticut, but it is a good system, and, you know, you've invested in a proper records management system. However, it's seriously underutilized, and I would hazard to guess that if we went into most police departments in this state, probably my own, we would find that it is underutilized. It is a robust, complicated, comprehensive management system that you really, really have to spend a lot of time with it to understand it. And you know, what we all do, if it's something that we don't absolutely have to know and we can't quite figure it out, we kind of just put it on the shelf and we move past it. And that's a little bit about what's happened here in Southbridge. And you need to develop a better understanding of the system. You need to use it better. So we would certainly suggest that the chief have more training for the people that run it and manage it, probably the staff in general, but certainly the people that manage it need to really have a much greater understanding of the system. One of the problems that we did find in your system when we reviewed your security profile, there are too many people in the department with too much access through the security module. If you look at the security module in IMC, and I'm sorry, but the gentleman that handled that is not here tonight, he's out of state. It is screen after screen of different areas you can restrict your access to it. Can you read it? Can you alter it? Can you change it? There's all kinds of restrictions that can be done. And we would suggest that Security rights for that level of manipulation of the system should be reduced. We found 8 people that had security rights in the alarm billing that should not have that right. They have the ability to exempt businesses from being penalized for excessive alarms. So we'd like to see some changes, more training in that area, and we've made some recommendations to the chief, and frankly, I think he said from day one that he knows that people can use more training on that. They really can everywhere. But again, this is expensive. We can provide our person to assist you with training, which is probably cheaper, but if you go to the company, it is very, very expensive. Thousands of dollars for a couple of days of training. Your system is not, you're not using your log correctly as far as logging your police officers on and off duty. That's something we'd like to see you use. It creates a permanent record of who's on duty. Under state law, you're required to have in your log who is on duty, who goes off duty. He complies with state law because it's in a log note, but it really should be in the log roll call on duty portion of the system. And it memorializes all of your staffing issues forever. So you can go back and do a very sophisticated analysis of your staffing issues. You can do individual ones of officers. We'd like to see get all your maintenance of vehicles in there. You'll actually have the ability to calculate what each vehicle costs you per mile, what it's costing you, so it'll help you with replacement issues. Very, very important stuff. The other thing that we found that was a real concern to us is the log is not sealed in a timely fashion. Again, a problem that is not unique to Southbridge. It happens in a lot of places. And what I mean by that is your document is a legal journal for the police department, and the chief will tell you that they often are called into court. Discovery requests want log entries, want log for a certain period of time. That is a legal document that defines what your department did on any given day. If you don't seal the log, someone can go back in time and change things. So, and we did not find any of that. But as an example, let's say that someone is involved in an excessive force situation and you get sued a year later. And 2 years later, in discovery, a defense attorney wants to see the log for that date. If you haven't sealed the log, someone could actually go back in and delete them from ever being on duty or put them somewhere else at the time. And we did not find any of that here. And we did look for that stuff. We didn't find any of that. But that's why you need to seal the log. You seal the log and no one, including the chief, no one, regardless of their security rights, can modify or alter that record. So what we would recommend is that at the end of July, that log can remain open through August to fix any corrections. You'll always have corrections with dispatchers. They'll mess up a call. They can fix it. But by August 1st, July 30th, 31st, all the way back to the beginning of time should be finalized. No one can change it. So you still have that small window, but memories are a lot fresher for 60 days, and it's easier to watch that stuff. So we would want to see that system finalized, preferably every 30 days. It protects the chief, it protects the town, and it is the record that you will be held accountable to in a civil lawsuit. I don't think you need me to go through all of the stuff in technology. There's an awful lot of stuff there. There's a lot to digest. We did see kind of lackluster use of the mobile data terminals. You're paying money every month, either with Verizon or AT&T, or perhaps Nextel, Sprint, to have access to the system. But a lot of your patrol officers aren't using it. They're not logging on. They're not running plates. Your detectives use it quite a bit, which is not surprising because it gives them total secrecy. People don't know what they're running because they're not putting it over the radio. The chief needs to have the guys utilize those mobile data terminals better, do your silent dispatching, and when you move to these civilian dispatches, you want to start, if you move that direction, you want to start them off immediately learning that system so that they're not doing everything over the radio. It really should be done over your mobile data terminals. You're paying thousands of dollars for this equipment. Your mobile switches, thousands of dollars just to have this. You need to utilize it better. And really, I would recommend that you look through all this stuff to decide what's important to you on that. And you kind of need to rely a little bit on the chief to think about that stuff. Anything else in technology that you'd like to discuss?
Councilor Carrasco.
Yeah, page 21, section 49 there. You ran a report in regards to exemptions, in regards to the billing of false alarms, I believe.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Again, this is things that your auditor would not see because your auditor starts with paperwork and moves forward. We start at the other end and work backwards. What we found was that when we ran your report, you have 6 exempted sites. 4 of them are very reasonable government buildings. We would expect them to be exempt. You don't want to be charging them $25 every time after 3 alarms that they have an alarm. But we did find Pizza Chef and Cohasset Restaurant at the Country Club were exempt. We did speak to the chief about it. I don't think he was particularly sure why. He said that there'd been some change in ownership and that people didn't want to be held responsible for alarms that might have been from the previous owners, or when people are renovating the building, if they're not paying attention to the alarm system. Our position is that needs to be evaluated. There should not be any exemptions other than governmental buildings. You should treat everyone the same, and you have a substantial amount of revenue that hasn't been billed out. Thousands of dollars, which your town accountant should look at, and that's something that your independent audit should have caught.
Now, it also states in the section prior to that there was no records for 2012. Is that correct?
We had problems finding alarm billing records. When we met with the current clerk, part-time clerk to the chief, which frankly should be full-time, I'm sure you don't want to hear that, she didn't even know that she was supposed to do that. You need to do a better job with your alarm billing. You need to be billing this stuff out because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of revenue that could come back to this town who desperately needs it.
Well, that can pay for a cruiser, absolutely.
Yeah, we would suggest on some of the numbers we looked at, you could probably pay for some important things. So on that issue, yeah, we'd like to see that fall through. It's a little similar to some of the stuff that was found in your management letters about pay details. Some of the stuff was out 90 days. We did look at your management letters related to the police. And this is an issue that, we would recommend that the town accountant and the police chief get together and take a look at it, see what receivables you can still go after, how far back you want to bill, and this is something you should be brought to the attention of your independent auditor so that they take a look at it. This was something that was probably missed.
Now, understanding that you just said that the secretary is a part-time, is this something that's just too much for her to handle, that should be passed on to somebody else?
With the size of this department, we believe you should have a full-time clerk.
Mr. Chairman?
Certainly,
Just to
certainly.
clarify a point. One of the places they talk about that was exempt was Pizza Chef. I have a $900 copy of a $900 check here that they paid, so that was wrong. My secretary now is full-time. She was trained by the previous secretary.
July 1.
She was trained by the previous secretary, who was a good person, but we only do this once a year. That 2-week window when she was training her, she didn't get to it. As Mr. Horn has said, we are a very busy department. We do a lot of billing. We do a lot with animal control. Mr. Clark and our town accountant are here, they can verify. When we do pistol permits, we have to look at this book that's about this thick, 50-odd pages, of unpaid taxes. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes. When we had a person about 3 years ago, I had to investigate for a very, very large water bill that should never have been. Through that investigation, we collected over $450,000 in unpaid water bills. So respectfully, yes, there's a few $1,000s here. I think it was $2,300 that we didn't collect. So I want you to know that, yes, we will do better. We will try harder. I want you to know that there's hundreds and hundreds of other thousands of dollars out there that aren't collected. So I don't want anybody listening to this on TV to think that this is something we neglect. It's not. We do a pretty darn good job of it.
And again, my question was, if
I
she was
respect that,
part-time,
Counselor.
it's just to make sure that, to correct it and make her full-time. I wasn't under the understanding that she was
Absolutely. I
a
have the
full-time
utmost
employee.
respect for the council. I just, with something like this, the public trust is so important to all the men and women here. I know how they feel about the town, that's how I feel. I have the utmost respect for the company that did this. There are certain pieces of this that if they had taken a moment and just reviewed this, I think you'd see a bit clearer picture. And I don't want to get, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me a moment. There are certain other pieces I'd love to talk about later, like we never have a meeting. I had 9 meetings last year. Glad to do it, but I think respectfully that whenever the chairman would like, perhaps at PPP or someplace, my hope is to sit with the union. I know they want to work together. I know they do. And we're going to sit down and we'll have our committee and we'll look through each and every one of these. And I'm very hopeful that, say in a month or so, give us a few weeks, we'll go through these pieces. And I'm very confident that the council, and very respectfully to all of you, that all the people out there listening will know what's really going on. And I know it's hard for them to come in and take a snapshot picture of everything that we do. So thank you for a moment. Thank you for the clarification.
On the alarm billing account, it's not reconciled. There are no records indicating that those bills have been collected. And that's the system we go with. That should all be reconciled in the IMC, and that is not the case. So if the chief has a check for $900, that's great, but that is not what his system indicates. As far as employee meetings, we found no evidence of mandatory department-wide meetings. We did find some sporadic mid-level management meetings. Did I answer everything that you had, sir? I'm sorry.
Yes, I was just trying to see if the position that the
the clerk's
secretary-
position.
Yes, if it was part-time and she needed to be increased to full-time. I was not aware of that, and I'm glad she is. Again, my biggest thing is the accountability. I think everybody should be treated the same. So if there was exempted things, I just hope and thank you, Chief, for correcting that and making sure that that doesn't happen. I think all businesses should be treated the same, and everybody should be treated the same. So therefore, that's why I'm asking the question, because according to the document, you did the audit. I think I deserve the answer from you.
Sure.
Again, of course, there's been corrective action that has been taken place since the audit has come along, and I'm glad for that, because that's something that needs to happen. Again, I just wanted clarification. Thank you. Thank you.
And when it comes to the exemption section in IMC for alarm billing, there are 7 people that have the ability to do that. So we're not suggesting any one individual did it. What we are suggesting is you need to have tighter controls on that security. You shouldn't have 7 people that have that ability to do it. And those 7 people include all ranks throughout the department. And on the clerical staff, yes, we do think that, and that was one of our recommendations, he should have a full-time clerk. Anything else on technology?
Excuse me, hold on. Councilor Nicola?
You know, it seems like we're finding that a couple of the things in the audit may have been corrected since the audit was completed. When exactly did you complete the audit?
Well, it was delivered on the 25th, I believe.
Right, but when was it finished?
It was, for the most part, finished within a couple of days before that. It has to go through a proofing, and then we did have one last discussion with the chief. So I'd say the last week of July.
So you
I mean, we
completed it.
interview people right up almost until the minute it goes to print.
So 2 weeks ago?
Sure, something like that, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All set?
Anything else in technology?
I do.
Councilor Marcucci?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a couple quick things, Mr. Horn. On page 19, number 44, just referencing, what, based upon your audit, and I understand you said Southbridge is not unique in using the computer to its fullest capacity. What percentage do you think is utilized by the Southbridge Police Department?
What
If you had to
percentage of the
take a
whole
guess.
system? Because that particular spot is talking a great deal about some of the laptop stuff. But,
Right, I'm going to get to that.
unfortunately, the gentleman that handled that part is not here, so I would be guessing. What I can tell you is, in his opinion, you are significantly underutilizing the system, as are many police departments.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. And going down to the laptops, and maybe the chief would probably answer this. Town of Southbridge pays $11,570 for maintenance and support fees. In addition, Hay Communications is paid approximately $10,000, so we're talking roughly $22,000. What is the difference between the maintenance and support and the Hay Communications? Why is it two different ones, Chief?
Okay, just one quick backup, if I may, please. It may help to clarify. 6 years ago, Karen, I believe, we switched to KVS, is that right, 5 or 6 years ago? Approximately 6 years ago, we changed to a town-wide KVS computer system. Now, prior to that, we used a lot more of IMC. We had everything going in there, our payroll, we had all of the hours, so on and so forth. Well, I'll be happy to go back to all of the IMC stuff if Karen will let me, because I really liked it, but I don't think she will. I'm just kidding. Ms. Harnois is very nice. So a lot of the reason we don't use a lot of the IMC is because we're big enough that we have a town-wide finance system. That's number one. Number two, IMC now is really TriTech. I don't want to mix apples and oranges. TriTech is all of our, you call us up, it's our log. We record your dispatch, we do our records, we do reports, so on and so on and so forth. It's very comprehensive. It really is a good software. That license is just for TriTech. We pay $11,500 to be allowed to use their software. Now, we're a pretty big place. We're actually 75 people. Fully half of those are part-time. Mr. Clark cringes when I say that. Approximately 75 employees. A lot of the training and the pieces we're talking about, we haven't done because for 8 years I've been advocating for civil service, for non-civil service dispatch. It'll be much easier to train 4 people. I was explaining to the chairman and Councilor Marcucci the other day, it's $1,200 a day for IMC training. So I feel that it's much more cost effective for the community to get a few dispatchers, train them very thoroughly, and allow them to do that rather than the 19 officers we currently use on dispatch process. The other bill that we have for software is Hay Communications, local company over in Southbridge. What they literally do is they take care of our hardware. The actual computer that we do all our memory on, they have a mirrored memory. One of our sergeants literally takes a tape off-site so that, God forbid, the building burn, we have it. But they manage that. They come in every couple of months, make sure that everything's backed up properly and everything's working as it should.
Okay. 1 second. Chief, while you're up there, just when you said about officers punching in, on page 20, I'm sorry if you don't have a book to reference to, Chief.
Yeah, I do.
So the police department is not using the system for attendance nor payroll,
Well,
or to track time, and the department still uses paper sign-in sheets for attendance, details, etc. And the police department does not use any of the scheduling, attendance, or time tracking, vacation, personal times, so forth, that is built into the system. Is this something that is just there that you've never been trained on, or?
Sergeant Avella is here. He's our tech guy and can probably explain it slightly better than I can. Years ago, I used to be the tech guy. I wrote the program that we used for 8 years. What we do is our schedule is in there. If you pull up 2 days ago, it's going to show you who worked. The schedule's there, and all it does is it'll give you, okay, that 3 to 11. Officer Smith was working 3 to 11, Officer Jones, so on and so forth. It's kind of interesting in that one of the audits that we had, now the town does a town-wide audit every year by statute. They have to. Every couple of years, they pick a department. Twice we've been picked. Last time they picked us, one of the recommendations they made to me when I was talking to them is, listen, this is really nice. It's nice that, the officer comes in, Officer Jones on the desk signs them in, and we still do that. But they said, really, there should be a secondary system. There's nothing that says they were there. Now, I've had other suggestions. I've had chiefs suggest to me, well, you know what we do? We take that IMC sheet, and after Officer Jones and everybody signed in, print it, have the sergeant sign off. What we do, as a suggestion from a previous auditor, is we literally, yes, we do have a sign-in sheet. Now, we have that sign-in sheet because just because somebody's scheduled to work 3 to 11 doesn't mean they're going to. There are things, swaps, there's vacations, somebody's out sick, so on and so on and so forth. The reason we do that, the reason we literally have them sign in is because, according to the Fair Labor Standards Act, there are certain things that come into play, shift differential, so on and so on and so forth. And yes, IMC does some of these things, and that's okay. And I'll be glad to pay $1,200 a day for those 3 or 4 people we bring in. I just don't think it's cost effective to redoing that and redoing that and redoing that with all those officers. So it was suggested to us to do it. That's why we do it that way. I'll be glad to transition over. It just becomes a matter of really money in hand. It's like the meetings. We did 4 staff meetings with the mid-level staff over the last 12 months. Glad to do it. The last one cost me $1,300. Councilor Langevin and I were talking to me the other day about doing somebody on Main Street. Now, you add those 4 meetings up just for the mid-level managers, I'm over $5,000. $5,000, I can put a cop on Main Street for you all year. I still do the meetings. I still do it. But management's about making choices. We're a community that needs someone on Main Street. Do I want to take that $5,000 or $6,000 and have another meeting? We do the best we can to meet and talk and do the rest. We try and balance. So, and I know that there's no way they can put this all in a report. I respect that. And I hope they understand my passion with where I'm coming from with this. This means a great deal to me. So, anything else, Councilor?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
If I could, I just wish to, I have worked in other towns of various sizes, and one thing that, I think is always important to know is that sometimes you have software packages that exist. We have KVS, we have IMC. There are certain capabilities that exist in those, and we need to figure out as an organization, that's not necessarily a department need, that's more of an organization-wide need that needs to be resolved. That do we want to pick one program and actually have a uniform attendance record? And, it's not the first time you guys heard from me that, in the 5 years I've been here, I kind of jokingly said, I am the HR department. Only this past year did we have one person, a part-timer, that is actually dedicated to HR. So we are trying to grow and improve the way we do HR, and the next logical step is to do a town-wide attendance system. So that's something we're going to look at. We'll look at the benefits of IMC, the benefits of KVS, and see what makes sense. So we haven't not doing it, but it does take time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
IMC does not interface with KVS. That is a problem. Of course, there's a lot of other financial packages out there. People are put on duty in log notes. The department should use the attendance logging section of the software. Even if you, and I think that your town manager makes a really, really good point, that there should be a good standardized town-wide system of attendance. It's a good point. We support that. But remember your statutory requirements. Your log must say accurately who is on duty and who is not on duty. And that must be in the police department. So you're going to have to find some common ground. If the chief has determined, and again, this is a management decision, if Chief Charette wants to do more things in KVS, we're not opposed to that. We were asked to look at IMC. That was one of our charges. You're underutilizing it. If there's parts of it that you don't want to use, get rid of it. Save some money. That will reduce your maintenance fees. Now, the amount of money that the chief is paying for IT and IMC maintenance is absolutely not out of line. In fact, I'm surprised that he's only spending what he's spending, $11,000 for other IT stuff. But IMC or TriTech, it's very expensive. and they have you. For the most part, they're the only game in town. So you don't have much choice. If the chief stops paying the maintenance fee, he no longer gets updates, and he no longer gets help. If you take nothing away from this report tonight, I hope that you'll see there's a theme of financial difficulties here, just like in every town. Anything else that you want to see in technology?
I have one more, really
Go
quick.
ahead, Council Marcucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Horn, page 20, can you explain, number 4, vehicle maintenance is used on a very limited basis. Is that for recording problems with vehicles? Page 20, number 4?
Page 20, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, our expert determined that it's used on a limited basis. But part of the problem with this is if he doesn't have staff to enter in what's done for maintenance, then you can't get it in. And as much as it's a good system, IMC, it's not like you can say, okay, we changed the spark plug and I just hit one button. Honestly.
Understand. Yeah, okay.
You've got to put the vehicle, the date, the time, the costs, what it was you did, the mileage on the car at the time. There's a lot that goes into it. It's a very robust system. It'll do everything for you. It'll tell him what that car costs him every mile of its life. But it's in depth. It requires someone to have a lot of time to do that stuff. So, sure, we'd like to see vehicle maintenance expanded and used more regularly, but if he doesn't have someone to enter all the data, it's not going to get done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else in technology? We're at financial audit. I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll ask Claudia Cataldo to come up, and if that was her area of expertise. As I've said before, and I'll say again, you have an independent audit by statute, it's actually in your bylaws as well. You have a review done of all your financial records, and then if there's a problem, the auditor will generally ask the town accountant, get me this information, or they might ask the treasurer or the collector, depending on where the issue is, or maybe the town manager. But generally, your auditor takes paper. And his people or her people go through it, and they'll say, can you explain this to us, how this was done, or why is it done this way? And then they'll make recommendations, and each year you'll get a management letter, which defines different things that they think you could do better. They will tell you what you're doing that's wrong, and they will tell you what you could do in a better way, which we refer to as best practices.
Excuse me, Mr. Horn?
Yes, sir.
You mind if we could take a 5-minute recess right now? So we've been at it for a little bit and then come right back. Just stop right there and then we'll proceed.
No. Sure.
So why don't we say we'll be back at 9:05. Thank you. Meeting's back to order. Mr. Horn, if you would proceed.
The last section we have is financial. We'll go through that pretty quickly. And honestly, all that's left is the recommendations, and we've really kind of gone through most of them already. But if you have questions, I'll answer them when we get there. All right?
Certainly, go ahead.
So for our financial audit, our review, again, we did things a little differently. You have a certified public accountant who does your independent audit. We didn't want to duplicate the work. We looked at, one of the things, a charge that we had was to look at grants. We went back 5 years. We went through all of your grants. We looked at your best practices, in our opinion, on how finances have been handled. We looked at the K-9 trust account. We looked at the law enforcement trust account. And that pretty much summarized most of what we did on finances, because again, you've already had an independent audit, which found very, very small issues, I think, just with details. So for those out there that don't have the document in front of you, what we did is, again, we talked to people. We talked to the people that handle the grants, we talked to the chief, we talked to the lieutenant, we talked to the administrative sergeant. We got probably thousands of documents, thousands of pages of documents between the town accountant's office and the police department. We have all the grant applications for 5 years, all the requirements, we have all the expenditures. We reviewed all the records from the town accountant, and we did not find anything that we were concerned with in the grants. We also interviewed staff. We did not find any problems with it. We also interviewed former civilian staff. We did not find any problems with it. We also independently discussed some of these grants with a federal official, and again, did not find any problems. There are no issues between the town and any of the grant providers, and again, we did talk to someone at the federal level to look at some of the stuff, and there are no disputes, no complaints. Nothing's currently under investigation by any part of state or federal government. And we believe that the chief has appropriately used the grants. Now, did he, whenever he could, pigeonhole in things into the grant so that the town didn't pay for it? Yes, he did. Should he have done that? Yes, he should have. There's nothing wrong with that. His job is to maximize the use of those grants, and we feel that he did that. We do not feel that he did anything improper. Just to back up 1 second, when we talked, the chief and I obviously don't agree on everything. So I think that dispels any rumors that I'm covering for him. The chief indicates that he's had some meetings, but if you read our documentation, we're talking about two different things. He has tried to call employee-wide meetings that are not mandatory and unpaid, and he indicates that he gets 4 or 5 people that show up at these, which is pretty standard. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about mandatory meetings where you must be there. And of course, if I have a mandatory meeting, I am required under both state and federal law to pay you to be at that meeting. That is money well spent. Because if you have everyone in the room, you dispel all the rumors, and it's not he said, she says, well, I wasn't there, or any of that stuff. And it's not all the backdoor discussions after the meeting. Everyone's there, you got to pay them, and then you make them be there. If they're not there, you discipline them. That's what the chief needs to do. We do recommend that you impact bargain with the union. They have a 4-hour minimum. We recommend that you bargain to a 2-hour minimum exclusively and only for these departmental meetings. We're not suggesting that the chief should impact bargain for 2-hour minimums for everything in the police department. Sure, you'd love to have it. That's not the standard in the profession. But for this purpose, the union should come to the table and say, we will benefit from these meetings. We agree to cut the costs by 50% so that we can have them. The union should agree to that, the chief should do it, and you should fund it. We think that 90% of the problems in this police department is a lack of communication and a lot of second guessing. So with that said, if you have specific questions on finances, if I can answer them, I will. If not, I'll ask Claudia to come up, Claudia Cataldo, to answer them for you.
Any questions, councilors? Councilor Marcucci.
Thank you. On page 28, number 64, down at the bottom, Mr. Horn, I'm just curious. You made a pretty strong statement during this particular aspect of our review. We were very impressed with Administrative Sergeant Jose Dingy. We believe that he is performing tasks generally done by an executive-level officer, and the town should consider him as an excellent candidate for promotion to an open lieutenant's position. It's a pretty strong stance to take, and I'd like an explanation.
Sure. Well organized. Currently has the only one in the department that's passed the civil service lieutenant's position, if I understand it correctly, and you have an open position. We think he's a very good candidate. We were impressed with him. He's well organized, as is the lieutenant. Both of them were very well organized in their paperwork and very candid with us. We were very impressed with your entire police department. And as I see the union president sitting here, I can tell you that we were very impressed with him, both as the union president and as a detective. I have been a union president many, many years ago. It's not an easy job. You're the tip of the sword. You battle for things that sometimes you don't even agree with, but you have to represent your membership. We think Mr. Bailey is behaved professionally in his leadership as the president, and we think he's an impressive detective. We think you have a great police department. We think you have a great lieutenant. We think he does a great job. And although he gets beat up in some of those comments, keep in mind he's the bad guy in the department. He's the one that hands out discipline. And frankly, he does it pretty well. Your chief, he's not happy with me at this moment. That's okay. He's a good chief. He's a professional. He's a kind man. And probably the toughest thing I can say about him is he might be a little bit too nice at times. There could be a lot of things that could be said that are not flattering, and that's not the case with your chief, nor your union president, detective, and certainly not with your administrative sergeant. And we do believe he is doing executive level work. He's not doing police work. He's doing executive level work, and he's passed the exam. Seems like a no-brainer to us. The chief needs more help at that level, outside of the union.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
if you could just go down to number 65 and talk about the K-9 trust account.
I'm sorry. Oh, page 28?
Page 28,
Okay.
yep, number 65.
What would you like to know?
You're
What I mean
saying
in that
that we should
paragraph?
have taken a vote to accept the gift and donations into this account?
Sure. Actually, I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to ask Claudia to come up and talk at length about it. Generally speaking, your legislative body, not a town meeting, your town council, should have adopted and voted to accept that account. You should have also set very specific criteria how that money would be spent. You should maintain the highest level of stewardship over money that people donate for a very specific purpose. I mean, of course, you should act proper with all of the taxpayers' money. But when someone says, I'm going to give you more money above what I'm required to by law, it should be used only for what they expect it to be used for, and only for what or your representative, in this case the police officers, have told them it will be used for. Now, if they give it to you and say use it for whatever you think is right, that's fine. We looked at that. We went to the town clerk's office. She could not provide any records that you have voted to accept that gift account, nor have you set any criteria. We were unable to find any criteria in the town accountant's office. We were unable to find any criteria in the police chief's office, treasurer, collector, and not that they would even have it in the collector side, but we even checked there. So with that said, Claudia, if you could come up, and she is a certified governmental accountant and a town accountant. She can probably give you a great deal more information on that.
Hi, good evening. With regards to the K-9 trust account, every gift that's given to the town by independent donors should only be used for that specific purpose, especially if it's intended for that use. If the council or the town chose to use that for other reasons, then they should have gone back to the individual donors and had permission from those donors who donated that money in the beginning with a written authorization to use the money for another purpose.
Okay. Now, could you be specific? Was there something that happened that I missed in this report?
I believe that
Specifically?
if you go on to page 29, under 68, some of the money actually was transferred out to purchase a vehicle on behalf of the town manager.
Are you talking the $15,000?
A portion of it, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that specifically came
From the K-9. yes.
residents and/or businesses that donated to the K-9?
Yes, correct,
A little over $4,000 came out of that.
correct.
Okay.
And do you want us to expand upon that? or
Yes,
you all
please.
set?
No.
Okay.
I would just, yeah,
Well,
just
you
a
can
little bit
But
of
stay
background.
here, please. So, is it illegal? No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think it's best practice? No, we don't. And there's a few reasons for that. One, we find no evidence that you voted to accept the gift account. Two, you didn't set proper criteria for how that money should be spent. And as Claudia, as Mrs. Cataldo said, that money should be used only for the purpose for which it was donated. And we understand what they did. But when you arbitrarily form an evaluation of what a vehicle's worth, you should have an independent appraisal. It should not be done, as the chief indicated, it was done by his maintenance or mechanic for the department. It shouldn't be done by anyone involved in it. Normally, you would have an appraisal done by a third party, and you could have easily have gone to MHQ in Marlboro, and they would appraise you and tell you what that vehicle's worth. Now, we don't know, we haven't been able to find the records, maybe the town accountant has them, if it was an administrative package or a police package. But either way, you should have used an independent arm's length appraisal by a third party. If you were going to buy a backhoe from the water district, is that something you've done?
Bad example.
Okay.
Very bad example.
If you were going to buy a helicopter from the water district, that's weird. If you were going to buy a helicopter from the water district, we would expect, and the best practice is, that you have a third party give you the evaluation of that. If you give it, the argument is that you made sure it met your needs. If the water district gets it, the argument's gonna be made that they made sure it met their needs. Now, you can disagree with the appraisal and choose not to go through with the deal, but it should be at an arm's length appraisal. And that, as best we can tell, did not happen here.
Okay. So we really haven't resolved this.
Well, we think that you should have used that money for its intended purpose. You should have bought a K-9 vehicle with that money. The money that the chief has in his budget that was transferred was adequate to buy a police vehicle. In 2007, 2008, 2006, right around that ballpark, that car was probably about $21,000 at MHQ under the state bid. Now, you have to put lights and equipment in it, which the chief did outfit it with approximately $5,000 to $6,000 worth of equipment. And he had to. But we think a better pick would have been to buy a vehicle for the K-9 out of those funds. If you want to get the town manager a new car, you take the car he has and you trade it in. Now, the mechanic, and I start to call him a janitor because he kind of does both jobs, so I don't want anyone to think I'm calling him something he's not. He does both jobs. But he said, according to the chief, that the vehicle at appraisal was somewhere around $17,000. It may have, I don't know. But I'm not an appraiser, nor is he. That's just his opinion. So if that car had a value of $17,000, why would we trade it for $15,000 into the police department? Just trade it into a car dealership for $17,000 or $15,000 towards his new vehicle and use the money in that account to buy the K-9 vehicle. It's cleaner, it's a best practice, and that's what we recommend. And Claudia, please, if you disagree with me or...
No, I mean, it's an audit trail in your grant, too. I mean, you want to have proof that people have donated that money and you've utilized it to the needs that they gave it to the town to be used for. So, I mean, I agree with the chief. The best practice would have been to get an appraisal of the vehicle and then trade it for the intent of which you wanted to purchase the vehicle for the town manager. And that way, the money that was intended for the K-9 unit is to be used. And that holds true with any gift account when someone gives money to the town on any behalf. If they are very specific in the way it's to be spent, then the town should follow those specific limits that the donor has given.
Thank you.
All set.
I am, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
I think the town accountant...
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. The accountant will get up when I'm done. Just to, there was a need for a new vehicle for the K-9 unit. The chief came in and we talked, and the vehicle that was purchased for the manager, that was purchased prior to my arrival, was a brand-new Crown Vic. So, and it was, I guess, a police package Crown Vic, and one that could be retrofitted to K-9 purposes. And to my recollection, there wasn't enough money in the account to go out and buy a brand-new vehicle. So I volunteered to give up the vehicle that I was driving, a newer vehicle, and to have it go literally to the dogs, so the dogs could have a new vehicle. So the transfer was made. I did not go out and purchase a new vehicle on behalf of the town and have the town pay for additional. I took the money that we received in compensation for the transfer of the vehicle from general fund to the dedicated fund and bought a used vehicle that I've been still using to this day. So the intent, I agree 100% that if you're going to use a trust fund or a fund that has a specific intent, that you have to honor that intent, which we did. So I don't quite understand, and if adequate follow-up had been done on this, that would have been shown, and the accountant today, I think it took her a little over a half hour to 45 minutes, dug up this information, and we could have provided it, and it never would have had to make it into the report in the style and manner in which it did. So I'm a little disappointed that half the information was obtained and decision-making was made based upon inadequate information. But Karen, if you would.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that there were actually 2 waves of fundraising that were done for the K-9. The first was for the actual purchase of a K-9 dog, which was done early, like around 2006. And the second fundraising was for either the purchase of a vehicle, new, used, or for some way for the K-9 to get a vehicle. So, and if I recall, and I don't know if I have a copy in my records somewhere, I believe that there was a fundraising letter that went out on the second part of it saying that the funds would be used towards the purchase of a K-9 vehicle. And while I agree that there should be a formal process put into place, which we will work on for the future for accepting donations, a formal process to go through, it was clear what each wave of that was for, and that's exactly what the funds were used for. And if I can just add one other thing too, the July 22nd was when the consultant came into my office to look for invoices and wanted to see things there. That happened to be the first day of my vacation, but no one ever came to my office to interview me, to talk to me about any of our financial policies, procedures, or any of these. So I just wanted to pass that on to the council.
Mr. Clark?
Just one quick follow-up to this. All this transfer was done through council. So this was all done in the light of day, and I don't remember what the vote was, but I'm sure it was either unanimous or majority vote through the council. So the purchase of the animal control vehicle, the purchase of my vehicle, and the money that was allocated, the allocation of resources to do that was all done through council, which is the appropriating authority in the community, and rightfully so.
We are very firm in our belief that this was improper. There was nothing that we needed to interview the town accountant on. We're very familiar with the fundraising, how it was done, very familiar. We probably know more about it than the town accountant does. We looked at all of the issues here. In our opinion, it was highly inappropriate to transfer money out of that to buy the town manager's vehicle. You also, if you were going to do it, you could have made it a little better if you had at least obtained an independent and third-party neutral appraisal of that vehicle, not the mechanic in the police department. Absolutely not. And interestingly, we haven't been able, and maybe the town accountant has, do you have the actual receipts for that car when it was purchased here tonight?
Yes, I actually do.
Could we take a look at those? What was the value of that car when it was purchased? The police interceptor in 2007. Do you have that here?
I do.
Could we see it?
It was purchased in 2005 for $19,000.
Okay, so in 2005,
It
it
was
was,
transferred in 2009 for about $14,000.
okay. You indicated that it had a value, the chief indicated it had a value of $17,000 several years later with what you described as high mileage. And it went from 19,000 to 17,000?
No, it's high mileage. What I said to you is it's high mileage for 6 months, 20,000 miles. 20,000 miles on a cruiser is not high miles. High miles for a short duration.
Actually, what you said was it had high miles on it, and I don't like a rear-wheel drive vehicle, they stink in the snow. We keep very, very accurate records of our conversations. At the end of the day, we believe you should have done a third-party neutral appraisal of that vehicle. That vehicle doubtfully had that value that many years later, and we think that that's problematic.
Sure, Karen.
And while I, understand this, like I said, it took me about half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, to find that invoice this morning. And if I had realized at any way during these last 90 days that this was a big issue, it wouldn't have been any problem for me to find this, get this information to the consultant. And again, I'm just going to say, I'm surprised that it was just last minute like that this was brought to light, and that, that since this seems to be a big issue.
We actually don't consider it a big issue. We just consider it an issue. And as far as the timing goes, when we get done with the stuff that we're looking at, we look at the next thing. And that was one of the last things we needed to look at. There was no last-minute evaluation of this. They're sitting here tonight. I still don't have any questions for her. The bottom line, and she has indicated that we are correct, it has not been properly accepted, and there has not been proper criteria for how that account should be utilized. We recommend that you do both of those things, and we do not agree with the transfer of the funds out. However, the council did vote. I have the vote. It's in your paperwork here. We provide that for you. We just don't think it was a good move. But we are glad that it at least was brought in front of you so you could look at it. In the future, we would hope things would be done differently. That's our only opinion. This is not a big deal to us. It's just another issue.
Chief.
Hi, thank you again. And really, this is for all the people out there listening, especially those who donated. One of the very critical issues I thought with this that hasn't come to light is that the year that Mr. Clark was talking about is very important. Mr. Horn is right. It's about $5,000 worth of equipment that has to go into that vehicle to really make it a canine vehicle. And what was so critical about this car, and the reason the mechanic thought it was such a good idea, is that because the exact same vintage as the vehicle that Danny Southall, our canine guy, drove into the yard that the gas tank fell out of and fell onto the muffler. So we were able to take all of that equipment out of that car, save $5,000 by putting it into this car. That's why the car was so attractive to the mechanic, not just that it was any old Crown Vic. They did change enough over the years so that if it was a different model, that stuff wouldn't have fit into it. So I want the people out there to know that that money went to get Danny Southall a car. To this day, he's still using that car, and it runs great. So it absolutely is for the canine. So thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully to close out on that issue, we commend the chief for thinking outside the box. We just don't agree with how this was done. It's our opinion. It's our professional opinion. It's our accounting experts' professional opinion. And we hope that you will, in the future, develop better policies to control how this money is spent. Is there anything else in finances you wish to discuss?
Go ahead, Ms. Dawn.
I'm sorry?
Proceed.
No? Okay, so we're at the...
1 second. Councilor Carrasco.
The latter part of the financial, can you just expand on page 30, number 69, in regards to the Law Enforcement Trust Fund, and just make sure that is clear?
Oh, yes. The chief has a great deal of discretion in using the law enforcement trust fund. Now, the statute specifically says that this will not be used to replace, if you will, the general operating budget. Some people might misconstrue that and think, well, the chief did something he wasn't allowed to do. When we have a law that maybe is unclear to us, we have to go back and look at what's called the legislative intent. What did the legislators mean by this? Well, they didn't mean that the chief couldn't do it. They meant that you couldn't do it. What they meant was you couldn't tell the chief, you have $1 million in your law enforcement trust fund, therefore we're cutting your budget by $1 million. So the chief can do it, and he has done it. We don't like it. We think that that money should be invested back in the detectives unit, but we understand why he's doing it, and it goes back to that common theme. He is in a financial crunch. And as much as Mr. Vandal doesn't want to hear it, and probably no taxpayers want to hear it, you're going to have to invest more funds into your police department. But what we'd like the chief to do with his law enforcement trust fund is use it for what it really was designed to be used for. It was designed to make us hopefully closer to being on the same playing field as the drug dealers. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of sophisticated technology. And sure, some of them don't, your street level people don't, but some of the people that his detectives are dealing with have a great deal of sophistication and resources available to them. What this law was at the state and federal level was designed to use their own money against them. So that we'd like to see the chief use it primarily back into his detectives unit. Just to be absolutely clear, he has done nothing that violates the law on the way he has used this money. We just think there's a better practice he should consider. However, if I was in his shoes and I need $5 to make it to the end of the day and I've got $4.95, I got to find that 5 cents somewhere. So we looked very carefully at what he's done with this money. We evaluated very carefully. We don't want him to continue to do that in our professional opinion, but we know why he did.
All set, Counsel.
I'm just going to kind of run through recommendations because we've kind of covered most of them.
Okay.
If there's one that someone wants to talk about, please tell me to stop. First of all, I want to say that the staff indicates recent improvements throughout the department, and they gave the chief credit, and we want to give the chief credit. The chief has, I think, reflected upon the last few months, maybe the year, and he's trying to make some improvements. I think that the union and the officers are probably going to do a little reflecting themselves, and I think all that's going to come out of that is good, as long as there's good communication between the parties. The chief needs to re-engage his department and repair the restrained relationship. Well, you know what? It goes both ways. But the chief is the chief. He's in charge. He is the captain of the boat. If the boat is off course, he must get it back on course. If he has staff that won't work with him, then he needs to take corrective action. He needs to re-engage. And that's why I'm telling you, these departmental meetings are so critical. They must be paid so that he can make them mandatory. And then if someone doesn't show without his permission to not be there, they need to be disciplined as insubordinate. Because if he gets everyone in the room and he talks to them and he asks them questions, they should have no business being in the town manager's office complaining that he's not talking to them, and they should have no business picking up the phone calling you and trying to undermine him. But he has to do that. If he doesn't do it, you should hold him accountable. If he does it, you give him the money to do it, and he does it, he needs to hold them accountable if they're not there. Staff, same thing. They need to find more effective ways to communicate with the chief. You know, we're a little concerned about people that sometimes want to get on duty and go upstairs and bend the chief's ear, but yet we don't want to stop the chief from that. We like that style. We like his style of, hey, come on in and talk to me. But we want to make sure it's constructive. The level of dysfunction in the department, again, the chief, he tries to please everyone. His biggest fault is he might be too nice of a guy. Perception of some that the chief is inconsistent in his method of discipline. We would like to see him make sure that he's presenting a very consistent standard of discipline in the department. We saw quite a bit of discipline. There's some areas where we would have handled it differently, but again, now we're getting into opinion and one guy's style against another guy's style. If the chief doesn't have a bunch of unfair labor practices or civil service appeals and complaints and grievances in front of the town manager, he's probably doing something right. And probably not doing a lot of things that are really wrong. But he needs to work on that. Of course, the other part of that problem is it's all confidential. You really can't tell him what he's doing. So it's difficult. So he's got to find a way to communicate with them. And they have to trust his judgment a bit. I think I put down under Section D, there is an unusual amount of second-guessing the chief and the lieutenant. That is sometimes a byproduct of being too nice of a guy. There's an old saying, and the captain and I were just talking about it, sometimes if you've got an aggressive or vicious dog, every once in a while you get a kick him to remind him who's in charge. And I'm not suggesting that he should kick anyone, but he's the chief. He gets to run the department the way he sees fit, provided he's following appropriate standards. There's destructive, demoralizing, gossip. It's all over the place. He's going to get rid of that when he has these meetings. People are going to start talking. Instead of you thinking what the chief said at the meeting you didn't go to, you're going to get to hear it firsthand. Stalled unproductive labor negotiations, you guys are going to have to work through that. We've told the chief, I don't think he disagrees, he needs to extract himself from negotiations. Under 150E, the labor laws of Massachusetts, it's very, very clear that the parties are to be on equal footing. They are equals. There is not a master-servant role. They're equal to each other, and they get to, if you will, battle without repercussions. If the chief is doing most of the negotiations, it's blurred. He is the chief of police. He is their boss. So when he leaves that meeting and they had a heated debate and then he disciplines someone, there might be the perception it's because of what happened in negotiations. We didn't find any evidence that supports that, but it's problematic. He needs to extract himself. That's the job of the town manager. He should be a resource to the town manager. The town manager can't know everything there is to know about operating a police department, but he has to be the guy doing the talking or a competent labor attorney. The chief should be a resource who sits quietly on the side and provides expert opinion on issues.
Sure. Councilman Moriarty.
Just a quick question as far as, again, kind of from the layman point of view and not knowing how these usually work internally. Is it really, how common is it for a police chief to be part of these negotiations? Is this the norm? Is it?
Yeah. It's very common for the chief to be a resource. It's unusual for the chief to be the primary or an equal participant as a negotiator. I have, on occasion, negotiated superficial issues because the person that was going to handle it wasn't available. But generally speaking, he has no authority to sign or execute a contract between the union and the town. He should be a resource. It is unusual for him to take a leadership role in negotiations. And it's also not a good idea because it opens you up to unfair labor practices.
What's that? Mr. Clark.
The process that we use, a process that I've used, in all the years of doing negotiations, is that, actually officially, it's the town's labor attorney that acts as the official spokesperson. That's part of our ground rules that we've had with the union. Obviously, as manager, I do the overall, I usually do a overview of the financial situation of the town. I address all financial issues, and as was pointed out, specific items related to specific details of departmental operations, the chief is there to comment. Does the chief provide advice to the management team? Absolutely. Does the management team, the way we do it, sometimes I do most of the talking, sometimes he does comment. He's a guy that likes to talk, I'll give him that. But there's no confusion that he doesn't sign the agreement, I sign the agreement. So, I take my responsibilities, I'm answerable to the council, and the duties that are clear that it is the town managers. And I have used extensively in the past labor council to be the chief spokesperson for the town. And that's the process that I've used in the 5 years that I've been here.
Just to be clear, we're not faulting the town manager for anything. We actually think he runs a pretty good ship. And again, as I said to him in a recent meeting we had, look, we can agree to disagree and shake hands and walk away. So we don't have a problem with the town manager. Nobody has a problem with the chief. We just think that either the town manager should be the primary person or labor council. Now, based on what I just heard, what I would suggest to you is there needs to be one primary negotiator, because otherwise it gets confusing. And although the town manager is trying to save money by not using labor attorney any more than he has to, sometimes it's really nice to use that labor attorney because they're kind of outside of it. There's no personal issues. But we're not suggesting fault in that. We just think that this can improve your ability to negotiate between the parties. I've already talked about the mandatory staff meetings. I did want to, number 7, I've kind of already talked about, but I really want to just say it again. I gave the chief some really tough love. Some of it was hard to hear. Some of it was hard to say. He took it very professionally, and he didn't give me any indication of, I'm going to get even or I'm going to seek retribution. He was very thoughtful, and he thought about it. Didn't agree with some of it, which is to be expected, but very impressive. And one of the things that people always worry about when we leave is that there's going to be retaliation, retribution. I don't see that happening with Dan Charette. I don't see it happening with the union. It would be nothing but destructive for the department. I honestly think they're headed in the right direction. And I saw some comments that the chief's putting together a committee to work with them. Home run. That's the way to go. Let them have a stake in it. Let them see how difficult and complicated it is, and also get to understand what's important to them. Because some of the things that's important to these guys, he can fix without a lot of money. And then they're going to be happy. We talked about the 4 meetings the first year. I think you can get to biennial after that, and hopefully maybe 1 a year if things work out. Contract negotiations, again, we applaud the chief for his efforts, but town manager or labor lawyer should handle that. The relationship between the town manager and our conversations with both sides, it's not where it needs to be. It's also not a shock. When you butt heads, you butt heads. And sometimes you don't like each other very much. They got to work through it. He's not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. They got to work through it. And I think both sides are capable of it, but they have to kind of put down the swords and say, let's talk. The town manager should not ask one individual from the union to meet with them. The union should not ask the town manager to meet with one individual union member. It's not appropriate. When the town manager is going to meet with the union, you should meet with the officers of the union. If the union president wants to meet with the town manager, he should be going there with officers of the union. Getting to the part that you were interested in, sir. 2 detectives' vehicles, in our opinion, need to replace immediately. They're well past their service life, and in fact, neither one of them was designed for the use that they are currently occupying. We recommend at least 1 police interceptor be purchased. That gives cargo room. It has a much greater weight capacity over the sedan by about 500 pounds. It's a good place for them to put their battering ram, reconstruction equipment, crime scene stuff, body bunkers. They need to have those vehicles sooner than later. The chief seems to be headed in the direction of buying the Interceptor utility over the sedan, and yes, it does cost a little bit more of money. I highly recommend that he continue in that direction. That is all I buy from my department. The state police is transitioning to all utilities. Highway Patrol in California, after extensive analysis tests, does not buy anything but the utility. Handles better, better ground clearance, more room, particularly for large prisoners. You also get to standardize your fleet, so your mechanic has parts that are specific to that type of vehicle. We recommend that the chief continue in that direction. We think you should move all to utility vehicles. We think this detective sergeant's car, it appears to be a perk. It's not uncommon. He gets his own car. When he's not here, it sits. We do know that he allows them to use it from time to time, but based on the current status of the fleet, we think that vehicle is underutilized and needs to move into the fleet. We think your detectives should have 3 sound police-rated vehicles, and then they're undercover vehicles. It is not appropriate to have 5 vehicles, police-rated police vehicles, because you have 5 detectives. It's not appropriate. We think that 3 is appropriate for that unit, but they need to be police-certified vehicles, all right? You have a Chevrolet in there that is not a police-certified vehicle, way over its life expectancy. You need certified police vehicles, because these guys, when they're on patrol, they may answer a call like anyone else. They may see a bank robbery and give pursuit. We want them pursuing, if appropriate under the policy of the department, we want them pursuing in a police-certified vehicle, all right? Not in a civilian vehicle. If they get into an accident, even if the accident would have happened no matter what they were driving, a defense attorney is going to make an argument they were not in a proper vehicle. They should not, they have undercover vehicles. There's a difference. Marked vehicles are marked. Unmarked vehicles are unmarked, but not undercover. Everyone knows who they are, but they're unmarked. And undercover, we've looked at these vehicles. They seem to be reasonably good vehicles. We're not going to discuss them any further. They shouldn't be stopping any cars in those vehicles. They shouldn't put a blue light in or anything else, because then that vehicle is known. So you can't include them as part of your fleet for detectives. Better controlling the evidence. I'm not sure you really need me to go through that. We would like to see the chief and the lieutenant extract themselves for having access to any evidence in the building. The reason for that is, if everyone has a key to that area, then no one is capable of objectively, independently conducting an internal investigation if something's missing. No evidence of anything missing. No evidence of anything wrongdoing. We prefer the lieutenant and the chief do not have any access to those rooms. And should they want to go there, they go with each other and with whoever does have access. We think they should make random visits and check the evidence contraband. But they should not have access to it, because that way, if something's missing, the lieutenant can conduct the investigation. He's not a potential suspect. The chief can evaluate the investigation, take appropriate action, and he neither is a potential suspect. We think the chief, we have a problem with personal-owned firearms as patrol rifles. I'm not going to get into all the details. You can read it. But for those out in the audience, when you have town-owned property, it is the property of the town. As a police officer, I do not have to ask your permission to take possession of that property. You are not the lawful owner. You don't have what we call a property interest under the Fourth Amendment. I can make you give it to me. If it's your own gun and you're right in front of me, there's a legal term called the Plainview Doctrine. I can take it from you because I see it. I'm lawfully present where I should be at that time. I can forcibly take it from you. If you go and put it in your car back at the police station, your personal vehicle, maybe I can. There's an exigent exception to automobiles. But let's say you shoot someone, or you shoot anything. You shoot at a traffic sign. You go home, and now we're going to investigate it. I have to get a search warrant to get my hands on that gun to do ballistic testing. So we don't really like personal weapons being used on duty. We're okay with it when you're off duty. We don't provide you're certified, but we don't like the personal weapons when you're on duty. We see what the chief's doing. He's trying to meet him halfway. We applaud both sides. These guys are willing to buy something out of their own pocket because the town perhaps can't afford it. We applaud both parties. We're concerned about that. You might consider talking to town council, your lawyer, and talk about a unconditional waiver, where the officer signs a waiver gives the chief the ability to take that gun. The lieutenant, we think he should have a standardized shift. He has a flex schedule. He indicated to Captain Green that and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a bit problematic, needs to be addressed. We're not suggesting he's done anything wrong, but we would like to see him have a standardized schedule. And everyone else in the department, if you want to take a day off, take a vacation day. If everyone can swap their days around, then we never know who's on duty or if we have adequate staffing. So we don't like that. It's not specific to the lieutenant. We don't like it for anyone. And the chief needs to have, there needs to be perhaps a little more day-to-day knowledge of the lieutenant's schedule. It kind of all goes together. We want him to maximize the benefit of his second in charge. The lieutenant is a key position. You have a good, competent lieutenant. Do not cherry pick parts of this report and think we've got a problem. We've never said that. Those employee comments are for them. We believe you've got a good department from top to bottom. We think there's things that could be done differently. I've talked a little bit about the dispatch logs, vehicle maintenance, I've talked about that. I've talked about the mobile laptops, financial recommendations, I've talked about, I've talked a little bit, but we recommend 3 new police vehicles fully equipped every year to rotate out of the fleet. If the chief gets to the point where he can back off a little bit, great, but you've got vehicles that need to go now. Properly accept the gift trust account. Again, we're surprised your independent auditor missed it, but that's why we do this differently. Because in fairness, if we did it the way your independent auditor did it, we probably would have missed it. That's why we do a reverse. Strict guidelines for how it's used. Expenditures should only be used for the purpose of how it's done. Unless you get, as Claudia said, unless you get approval from the people that gave it to use it for some other purpose. We think you need to move towards 40. We're not suggesting you have 40 police officers tomorrow, or this year, or maybe even next year. We think you should move in that direction. We think you should start with your dispatch. We think the chief deserves an employment contract. We think he should have benefits, stability in his job. There's nothing that indicates to us that he gives any less than 110% to this community. I think it's a small thing for you to give him a contract. We highly recommend that he goes to the International Police Chiefs Conference every single year, wherever it is in the country. It is not a lot of money. $400 or $500 for the conference, a few $100s for plane fare, and his hotel room. He should be going. He should be there with his peers. Civilian dispatches, I talked about that. Scheduling system, we want to see some improvements in that, 30 days, including the lieutenants, so that we kind of know where everyone is. We did hear a lot of problems that there's changes in scheduling at the last minute, and no one updates, and so people don't really know who's coming and going. We'd like to see that tightened up a little bit. The town manager, he's going to need to support an efficient and responsible budget. I've really already talked about that. The chief, we'd like to see him handle the trust fund a little bit differently, but he's well within his rights. That's it. Questions?
Any questions, council?
Town manager has my phone number. You can call me anytime you want from now 20 years. All right? If there's something you don't understand in here, call me. We don't want it misinterpreted. This is, and I think I'm not going to steal the information that your chairman's going to say, but he's absolutely right. There's a proper way to use this report. He's going to tell you how to use it. We hope you'll do that. Don't cherry pick it. Take the good and the bad.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. Councilor Marcucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you.
I
Mr.
almost
Horn,
made it.
I know, it's very brief. Councilor Moriarty is chair of PPP, and
I'm not even sure what that is.
protections of persons and property, I'm sorry, and the police, the fire,
Glad you
fall under
clarified
that.
what that acronym was.
And I'm sure we'll be referencing this and going through it with the police chief and the town manager. Would you be available? Could Councilor Moriarty call you ahead of time if we're specifically going to follow through with recommendations, get the input from the chief and the town manager, see what direction
Yeah.
they want to go?
Yeah, it's $750 an hour. No, well, I'm not going to drag the rest of my team back, but I'll come back whenever you want me. If Mr. Moriarty wants me there, I think there's an indication he might want me there next week. I'll come back. And I'll come back in 6 months if you want us to, you want me to take another peek and see how things are going at no cost. We're not looking to make a living on this. We all have careers. But sure, we'll come back.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councilor Moriarty.
This one isn't really a question per se, or maybe the chief may respond if he's so inclined. It was referenced, I believe, by Mr. Horn, and it was in the Telegram article as well, on the committee idea, which I agree, I think is an excellent idea. And I'm not sure what your timeline is, your time frame as far as putting that together and starting those discussions with the staff and such. But somewhat building off similar to what Councilor Marcucci had noted as far as PPP and those sort of things. One thought would be, certainly you're gonna want, and I think you said it yourself, 3-4 weeks, whatever, a month, to kind of go through a lot of these things and kind of assess them with your committee, whomever that may encompass. So I agree with that. I just would like to see, I think, some point after Labor Day, early mid-September, we can kind of start going through some of those recommendations through what you've done with your own committee through PPP, and kind of go with that. And really kind of, if we could, I think ideally, to kind of help with any sort of miscommunication, if we could have some sort of cohesive document, I guess, for lack of a better term, out of that committee, I think that would behoove everybody involved. And that's just kind of my own suggestion or thought process at this time.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, over the course of years, we have audits done. It is a usual and customary practice when we receive professional audits that we go through the findings as an administration, certainly with the department head. We will look at which items that we think we can do. We will also look at which items we think are going to cost some significant money. We will assess. We also need to assess where we are in the negotiations process. So we will vet those out. Some things I think are certainly appropriate for PPP. I think some things are really appropriate to the collective bargaining process. But I think one of the tones in the report is that things have been getting better, and we will continue that trend. And I do think, and I do recognize in the report that communication needs to be improved. I got that part. So what we can do to do that, we will make every effort to endeavor to accomplish that. I would ask, pursuant to kind of the chief's idea, that why don't you give us a little bit of time? We'll come back with what we think we can tackle, what we can't tackle. Every town has Proposition 2.5, and Councilor Vandal's taken the brunt of being the fiscal conservative in the room. But the reality is, there's only so much money that can go around, and I recognize that. And I think anything we do has to recognize that, because this past year we actually, I think, did almost 7%. My accountant usually gives me the nod when I have it right, but I think she left. Oh, no, she's there. I think we increased the police department by almost 7% this year. We put a significant amount into training. So we've already taken a significant step towards trying to resolve these. And some of these things we need to, we have built in, and we will continue to build in, because I recognize that they need to be done. But I would ask for, 30 days and let us report back, and certainly, and I've been the manager here for actually this month will be my 5th year. You know what you have in me. You know that if I give my word, I will keep my word, and that if we say we'll look into it and try to get it done, then we'll do that. So, I would ask, I don't know if the chief wants to elaborate anymore, but, I would say we'll be back and we'll see what we can do to get some of these things accomplished.
Just that Detective Bailey and I spoke very briefly last week. I asked him I believe they're meeting tomorrow night as a body of the union. My request was, let's get 4, 5, maybe 6 people from the union side, set a regular schedule of meetings, maybe every couple of weeks to get started. And that way, if everybody can't make one particular meeting, at least we'd have enough to get a quorum together. And let's start talking about what the recommendations are. I don't want to get the rest of the union mad at Scott, but he's a pretty good guy, and he's been working very hard on all this too. So I'm sure within a month or so we'll start at least getting a feel, and perhaps at that time we can bring it to PPP.
And I agree really with a lot of what's just been said, but between the two of you as well. I just wanted to, we heard a lot about this time last year when we started talking about this audit and the cost of it and taxpayer money and such. We spent the money to do the audit, and I think that if we, I agree, we can take a look, and I'm sure there are certain recommendations that are really more appropriate for CBA, which is fine. But generally speaking, I think for the taxpayers themselves, they want to make sure that this money was well spent and that it's not going to become a paperweight. and that it's looked at. So that's something I think is important for us to do. That's all. Thank you.
If I could, since there's several union people here tonight, a couple weeks ago, I received an offer from the fire union to go in and meet with them because they had issues. And they invited me into, and the fire chief as well, into a union meeting. You know, I've always said this before, you know, I've gone in front of DPW, I've gone in front of fire, anytime, anywhere. If you guys want to have a meeting to talk about things directly, more than happy to do that. So I do wish, because since you're having a union meeting, you know, I want to extend that offer officially. And I think the firefighters, when I went over there a couple weeks ago, were very appreciative that they said it was the first town manager ever in the history to do that in front of the union. So, you know, I don't like that we have so much discord, quite honestly, in the communications model. And whatever we need to do to set it right, I would like to set it right. So you have my open invitation.
I just have like a 20-minute closing. Yeah. What we've seen here tonight is exactly what the three of us had hoped for. Our report is designed to sometimes say things that you don't want to hear, everyone in this room, but it's to make things better and not to make it worse. And the conversations with the town manager, the chief, the union president, you guys are headed in the right direction. It's been an honor to work with you, and you have a great police department. We really looked deep in the dark corners. There's nothing there. You've got a good department. You've got a good chief. You've got a good union, and you got a good town manager. And he beat us up pretty good on the price, so he saved you some money there. You've got a good town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dismissed.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Horn. Just want to say, first of all, I want to thank the citizens of the community and councilors, Mr. Horn, Chief Charette, Mr. Clark. Again, I said before a long time ago, I've been through audits, and audits are a hard thing. It's hard to hear. It's always good to hear what you're doing really well at, but it's really hard to hear what we need to improve on. So my stance will always be the same on this audit, whether people agree with me or not. The bottom line is now we have an audit. It just got presented to council. There were some good questions, but as I believe, what we do with it now is the most important thing. And I'm seeing it is a positive direction. We know we have a great police department, dedicated men and women in there, and I'm proud that they're our police department. But now, what we have to do now, and it takes two sides, so yes, it's going to take the police chief reaching out, and it's going to take the town manager, and it's going to take the union, and come together, and this council is going to have to do their part too. We're going to have to figure out a way on how to do that. Sometimes we don't like to hear it, and I've had some conversations with Mr. Clark and the police chief, and I'm pretty open about it, and Mr. Horn had it right in his audit. We are a small city with a lot of problems. There is no doubt about that. If we turn and look the other way, we're doing disjustice to our community. So in the spirit of moving the meeting along, I do believe what I would like Mr. Clark to do now, and I asked last week when I said I gave all the councilors their the audit, is please just take the information, review it yourself, be respectful and stuff. Well, in between there, I did have citizens chime in thinking that we're trying to cover up things. By no means, we're not trying to cover up anything. What my thought was on this whole process was I wanted to give the council that the citizens elected the opportunity to look over the literature, absorb it, and I also wanted to give Mr. Horn the opportunity to do his presentation before things get really misconstrued out there, and that happens in every town, and it's just not fair. So what I would like to do now is he did his presentation. we're going to move forward. I really would, because it's 10 o'clock, it's late, we still have a couple little more things, but I would like Mr. Clark now, this is how open we are, there's nothing to hide, is to get a couple copies, put one in the library. It's open, we're not here to hide anything. Put one in the town clerk's office. People can come in and look at it and read it. No, it's not the town manager's responsibility to start making copies of all this. If you wanted copies, you would have to do it, but it'll be open to the public to look it over, read it, and you're going to find out basically what was a lot said here tonight. There's no cover-up, it's very open. And I do appreciate, with that being said, I would like the town manager to move forward with that. And if possible, I really would like, because we are moving forward, and I think we're all doing very well, and I appreciate it, but I would like to have a meeting of the whole next week, just quickly, to see, because now the citizens are going to have an opportunity, and we all know from past experience, if we have a big agenda, the meeting gets prolonged. If we just have one specific thing that if the citizens want, it could be a short meeting, it could be a little lengthy meeting, if Mr. Horn doesn't mind coming back quickly, and give the citizens just an opportunity and any other councils so we can move forward tonight. And then we'll come up with a course of action, basically, as the chief said, of how we want to do this with the town manager, as far as a committee, and whether it's Council Moriarty's committee, or if it's the financial end, it's Council Nicola's committee, but the process so we can continue moving forward. So if we could do that, not that everyone wants to have another meeting, I understand that, because it is summertime, but we're on the right path, and I just want to kind of continue moving forward. So, Mr. Horn, I thank you again, and Chief, and Mr. Clark, I thank you. Councilor Clements?
Thank you. I'm just curious, so you're looking for next week, we're all here now. I don't know if people have their calendars, I don't know if you want to pursue something or not. P&D is the 13th at 6:30. Don't know if you want to try for Tuesday night at 7. That way we could sort of piggyback and just keep going, or is that not?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to interrupt with anything you're doing. I will be out of town next week if you
Yeah.
want me there, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that was just a thought since you brought it up and all were here.
And the town manager's not, you're on vacation the following week.
I'm gone on the 19th.
How about
Excuse
the week
me,
after?
Just looking at my calendar, too.
27, 28?
And it necessarily doesn't have to be on a Monday, obviously. We want to just make sure we're not staying on a school committee night, too, and stuff like that, so. My calendar doesn't want to come up. There it is.
Last week of the month? Anybody free?
The 26th?
Yeah, the last week of the month.
Everyone back on the?
I'll be back.
Yeah. How's the 26th? 26th for this council sound?
Actually, no, I'll take that back. I may not be here.
26th? Mr. Clark?
Actually, no, I have something. I'm not going to be here for the 26th.
I just don't want to keep on dragging,
I know.
you know, I just want to proceed. It doesn't have to be a Monday.
What is it? What is the 26th?
It's a Monday.
That's a Monday.
That's a Monday.
Sometime that week, pick a date.
I
Everybody.
could do Wednesday.
The 28th?
28th.
Does Wednesday, the 28th for this council work?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to leave.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so what we'll do,
Nice to meet you.
Mr. Clark, is
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
thank you. So we'll go to the 28th.
28th.
Yeah.
That way now you're announcing it too, so people have time to go look at it if they want to.
August 28th, Wednesday, August 28th. Mr. Clark?
Where's the meeting going to be held?
It's going to be
Thank you.
August 28th, 7 o'clock, in this room. No, we'll keep it in this room because we wanted to stay at the end, we said at the end of August. So we'll stay right in the Pioppi room, and then all our meetings, council will hold meeting. So August 28th, 7 p.m. in the Pioppi room, and I thank everyone.
Just a quick question.
Certainly.
Kind of building off the idea of putting out a copy of the report here, as well as the clerk's office, right, but here in the library's office. Do we have an electronic version of this for the website at all, or?
Actually, we could put an electronic version on the website. We do have the first 41 pages. I'm sorry, these guys probably yell at me because I'm late. I'm way too far back from the microphone. We could put it on the website. We have 41 pages already scanned.
And I
You
think
know,
that
a
would
lot
help
of it
out.
is just backup information. I
Right.
think if people want to read the base of it, it's really the first 41.
Right, and if they get the.
We'll put it on the website too. I have no problem with that for full disclosure. We have received requests for public information requests, so if people want the entire document, maybe we will continue to charge them. If they want to just see the version on the website, then certainly we'll
Right,
make
or
that
they
available.
could even see the first 41 on the site and then come here to wherever.
Correct.
To see the backup documentation.
No,
Okay.
no problem at all with that.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on, agenda item number 8, Citizens Forum. Are there any citizens in the audience tonight that would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda tonight? Please state your name and address.
Good evening. Good evening, Roger Coward, 82 Tiller Avenue. We're here speaking in regards to the registered motor vehicle in the town of Southbridge. I've had petitions drive since last Thursday, and I've collected 1,824 signatures. And also I have is a poster made by Councilor Amelia Peliquin, which is was being distributed to all the participants in the town of Southbridge to take part in this drive. And I'm urging all the citizens of Massachusetts to sign this petition to keep the 28 registries in Massachusetts alive. And because registered motor vehicle and Governor of Massachusetts wants to cut down to 10 registries of motor vehicle. That means anyone who doesn't have a computer or cannot do transactions online must use a registry of motor vehicle in the future. And if that means, and another thing is, the governor of Massachusetts believes in green energy. At the cost of the taxpayers of Massachusetts, if you can't do it online, you might have to go 20 miles to 100 miles and lose half a day's pay or a day's pay in unnecessary expenditures of fuel to and from the registry of motor vehicle to do your transactions at the cost of saving a few dollars for the state of Massachusetts. So I urge everybody in Massachusetts, please sign a petition because it's a statewide issue, it's not a local issue. And it means saving you money, unnecessary expenditures, spending long times at lines at a registry of motor vehicle. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to ask Councilor Kathy Nicola the list of all the businesses in Southbridge and part of Sturbridge that are participating in this drive. And if you want to sign the petitions, you go there, and I'll be around town for the post office. I hope to be in front of Big Buddy very shortly. So please sign this petition. That's all I ask you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Councilor Nicola. Thank you, Mr. Coward, also, thank you for all your hard work. And there is the letter that got amended last week that's going around, so councilors can sign it, and we're going to proceed forward. And also, I had a discussion with Mr. Clark. He will reach out to the other surrounding communities, their management style, and also draft up a letter, because it also affects their towns too. So the more people, the better it is. But I appreciate all your hard work and effort.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to do this because I live in the town of Southbridge and I volunteered to do this, and nobody was pushed behind to push me to do this forward. So all I'm asking is, if the citizens of Massachusetts, please reconsider. If you voted, especially Boston, if you voted in the past in a negative way regards to the registry of Southbridge closing, now to change your way of thinking and vote in a positive way, because there's 18 registries out of 28 and it'll be closed permanently if the registrar of motor vehicle and the Governor Duval Patrick has his way of doing things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cowett. Is there any other citizens out there that would like to speak tonight on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing, oh, sorry. Councilor Nicole, I'm so sorry. I think you understand, though.
I do. Oh, I do. Yes. Okay, this is the list of businesses where you can, if you're in the business or if you want to go to the business and sign the petition, this is the list. Annie's Restaurant in Sturbridge, DeRozier Insurance,
Southbridge. Dick's Hardware, Southbridge. Eagles Club is in town. All these others are Southbridge. Floods. Hometown Hardware. That's up by Big Bunny, I believe. Paul's Automotive. Pilsudski Polish American Club. Riverniders Hot Dog Cart on Main Street. Tassie Fuel. VFW Hall. Village Photo. Zoe's Pizza. Ramo's Barbershop on Hamilton Street. Finally Lisa's Hairstyle on Hamilton Street. Hamilton Pizza, Hamilton Street. Crown Fried Chicken, Hamilton Street. The Salon, which is on Hook Street. The Bicycle Shop on Central. Southbridge Veterinary, also next to the Bicycle Shop. Mini Market, which is Las Hermanos Mini Market on Central Street. Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. I'm not quite sure the connection, but I guess you can, inquire. Norma, what's that? Norma Ray on Main Street. Fidel's Coffee Shop on Central. Juliana's Eatery, it's a pizza shop on Worcester Street. Lucy's Laundry on Mechanic. Sherman Williams Paint, and that's in Sturbridge. Fisk Hill Plaza, that's where it is. Sherman Williams Paint is in Fisk Hill Plaza in Sturbridge. Elm Center Cafe, Hyde Manufacturing. Wholesale Electric, which is on East Main Street, the Center of Hope. And Abacus Industries, which is on Mill Street.
I imagine the Hamilton Pizza is actually Pizza Chef.
Hamilton Pizza, yeah, Pizza Chef, sorry.
No
That's
alarms.
it.
Thank you, Counselor.
We don't have any pizza joints in Southbridge.
Moving on to agenda item number 9, vote to appoint the officer of I'll say that, Elizette Rodriguez to the Commission on Disability for a one-year term to expire June 30th, 2014. This one-year term is to complete the term of a previous officer assigned to this committee. Do I have a motion? Discussion? All in favor?
Really?
Thank you. Agenda item number 10, Council's Forum. We'll go with Council Moriarty.
I actually had nothing originally planned, but as we went, I kind of ended up jotting something down. And so just bear with it. It's relatively short. I've talked to a great many people as of late who feel strongly that there's a bit of a credibility gap with the town. And some of the issues that were discussed a little bit tonight included, the donations, where they're going, other actions or inactions of the town. And this is beyond just the police department itself, but just town-wide. Whether that be the work of the council manager or otherwise. And sometimes these issues kind of only fuel this mistrust and this self-loathing that the town's people tend to have as far as our own town, and that kind of runs at a fever pitch sometimes. And that's kind of, the issues within the report did raise a number of concerns of varying degrees, in particular with accountability per se. And there are certain policies in all of the town departments that really kind of need to make sure we give them a good hard look on a regular basis, not just doing an audit and then, that's the end of that. So kind of building off of that, we need to make sure we maintain everything we do and making sure everybody's held accountable and good, strong policies. And we need to do that as a council as well as a town to work through those issues and look forward to doing so, regardless of how many pleasant and unpleasant meetings we have to have for that. So that's all I really have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nicole. Councilor Nicola, next, please.
Well, I really was reserving my comments for Councilors Forum, and after listening to what Mr. Horn had to say in his review of the audit, while there certainly is room for improvement, I hope that the town looks at this from the angle that I'm looking at it at, and that's that, as he said repeatedly, we have a very good police department. That's what you should be concentrating on. That is accountable and has always been accountable. he could have had a field day if there was problems with our police department, and there really aren't. If you listen to what he recommended, it's small potatoes, and that should tell you a lot, that we do have a very, very good police department, and that what we lack in size, we make up for in a bunch of people who make do with what they have. Yeah, there's grumbling. I would be grumbling too if I was, driving a vehicle that had 150,000 miles on it. But they understand that the limitations that we have in our budget. We here, as a council, we hear constantly, don't raise taxes. We pay too much for taxes. Everything is too expensive. All you do is give away the farm. Well, what we heard tonight, certainly if you want more out of your police department, then you're going to have to expect more money being spent. And that is going to be a challenge for this council, for the financial people involved in administration, but you can't have it both ways. And that we knew a year ago when we voted, some people voted for the audit, that it might come out with all kinds of expenditures that will need to happen. I recall the manager saying it very specifically. Be careful what you wish for. So here's the day of reckoning. And that's going to require an awful lot of planning and cooperation. I think that for the most part, his recommendations, you're looking at a lot of money, an awful lot of money that we don't have. So I'm anxious to see how we proceed from here, but I'm hoping that the people in this community listened carefully to the fact that that auditor did say, we have a very good police department. We have a very good town manager who's fiscally responsible. I'm coming away with that too. That's what I was hoping to hear in this audit. Not that, that there was some awful things that they were going to uncover, that they were going to underscore what I already knew. And that's what I'm taking with it from tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Pelican.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Vandal.
I've got a couple, excuse me. I've got a couple of things I want to answer through you to the town manager. Who will maintain the hill at the intersection on Woodstock Road? That big mountain that we got down there that's getting all nice, got nice grass on it growing now.
Yeah, technically that's Commonwealth of Mass property.
So they'll be taking care of it.
Technically, it's Commonwealth of Mass property. I mean,
They
can't speak for. I honestly
haven't
can't
been
speak
taking
for
care of
them.
anything. You're right. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I can't speak.
Number two, the barrels on Main Street, they get full, and they don't get emptied, as often as they should. And when they do empty the basket, empty the liner that the basket sits in, because they just keep putting the basket on top of the trash.
Okay.
And number three, Torrey Road is looking good and should be finished before school starts. I was up there a couple of times, drove it to Lent, and it's really, really a nice road now. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Clements.
Thank you. I apologize, I do have a couple of things. I know it's late, but community information. One thing, I was asked to announce that the Kennedy Donovan Center from Southbridge, it's out on Worcester Street, and it provides services to infants, toddlers with developmental delays in the South Central region. They are having their first Kids Do Count fundraiser. It is a 5K trail run and family fun day. It's not going to take place until September 21st, which is a little ways off, so you might hear me mention it again. However, the reason I'm mentioning it now is because I was asked, and that there is a pre-registration deadline of August 30th. It's $25 for a runner. If you register the day of the race, it's $30 for a runner. There are family activities, children's race, and that's $20 per family. If you register by the 30th, you also get a race t-shirt. So this looks to be a great way to support this cause, to support this community business that's here and that does a lot for the children. And if you are interested in registering online, it's at www.runsignup.com. And you can also call the Kennedy Donovan Center at 508-765-0292 for more information. If you would be so inclined also, perhaps you might want to sponsor. There are sponsorship opportunities for water and T-shirt sponsors and different events, event goodie bag sponsors. If you're interested in that, again, you can call the Donovan Center at 765-0292. Hopefully we'll get lots of participation. Secondly, community cleanup. Myself and Councilor Manna are going to be heading up community cleanup on Saturday the 17th. We will meet 9 a.m. at the Wells School parking lot on Main Street in Marcy. We are hoping to get a good turnout. Our streets need to be cleaned up. It's been a while since we've been out there. It's been a very busy summer season, but we'll provide you with bags from the town, and we'll have some gloves. Of course, you're welcome to bring your own. Water, and usually we bring a snack of some sort, so come and show up before 9 o'clock so we can head on out. We usually spend a couple of hours. It's really not hard. It's great community service. It's great exercise, and it's an opportunity to give back and show your support for the community with cleaning up the streets. Everybody can help out. If you can't join us, do it in your own community. Get out there and just pick up in front of your own property, even if you can. But certainly, it's been great in the past, and we've had some good participants, and we're hoping if you're interested in joining us, give us a call or just show up rather that day. That's Saturday, September 17th, 9 o'clock. We're going to be posting it in the newspaper under the events listings. And I think that's it for this time around. Oh, kudos to Mr. Cowett. I'm sorry, I have to give Mr. Cowett kudos for being out there and getting all those signatures. I know that Councilor Peliquin is involved in this push too, and I'm working on things on a different perspective. I hope to get out there and start collecting signatures with Mr. Cowett. But, if you're out there, sign one of those petitions. We saved the registry before. We can do it again, but it's going to take everybody. So please sign, and we'd like to get them turned in before the end of the month because our representative is going to take them to the State House for us in September. So sign the petitions, get them back to us, call us to pick them up, whatever it is you need us to do to facilitate that petition drive. So thank you, Mr. Cowett. All set.
Thank you, Councilor Carrasco.
Yes, it's just one thing. In light of what took place today, I have vowed to the citizens of Southbridge to be accountable, to be respectful, and to bring unity to this town. And I will continue to ask questions. I will continue to seek answers because I think it's our right as a council, and I think the public deserves that. Again, the questions that were asked was because I needed clarity. It's unfortunate. I just was elected in June, so I need to make sure that if moving forward, I want to make sure and make the best decision forward, and make sure that everywhere, whoever is audited, whoever's next, that they're maintained accountable. They remain all levels of respect, and we unite as a town. Again, we do have a great police department. We have great men and women that are dedicated, that work long hours, and that put their lives on the line daily. And I think we need to continue to respect them, honor them, and treat them with respect. So I urge the citizens of Southbridge not only to treat the police department with respect, but also our fire department, anybody that's working for us, respect them. Let's unite as a community to push Southbridge forward. That's all I got, Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marcucci.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Agenda item number 11, discussion of the next meeting date. Councilor Marcucci.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be Monday, August 19th, 7 p.m., right here in the Piapi Room.
Thank you. And agenda item number 12, I have a motion for adjournment. Anyone want to have discussion on that one? Thank you. Everyone have a great night.
All in favor?